Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti, and tonight it's episode 74. KEIR Covington is my guest. KEIR Covington, a good friend, and an unbelievably talented dude. So talented that I had to hire him. King Cryptid number 4. Look at that front cover. Colors by Christian Rossi, artwork by KEIR Covington, and then he's coming back on issue 9. Don't miss it. It's on kingcryptid.com right now. Before we bring him on, though, we're going to have a great conversation tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. I want to say hello to you in the chat. We got Bear here. What's up, Bear? Says, hey, guys. Hey, Pete. How's it going? Got through the Blood Realm and Red Koi. About to go through Downcast next. Awesome stuff. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Bear. Thank you very much, my friend. KEIR's in the chat. Look at this guy. He's everywhere. Everywhere. He's in the chat, and he's on the panel tonight. Grape Nuka-Cola, how you doing? We got Seer of All That Is Obvious in the house. Conspiracies in Comics is here as well. What's up? Blue Terry Narrations, good evening to ya. Manny Cornejo is here. What's up, Manny? Thank you for being here tonight. Death Metal Hero, what's up? Luke, hope you're doing well. We got Cole King in the house, too. Says, great to see KEIR back here. Yeah, it's great to have KEIR around. KEIR's such a good dude. Such a good dude. He deserves to be super busy with drawing comics. But not busy, not so busy that he can't make King Cryptid issues. Just busy enough. Wiley J. Draws. What's up, Wiley? Seer of All That Is Obvious says, push the Make It Go button. And there you go. Mighty Joe says, hail, it's showtime. Bobo. What's up, Bobo? Says, Pete, I just turned 40. Can I get an I feel you, bro? Man, well, happy birthday. I can't say I feel you yet. I still got 10 months. 10 months. And then I can say I feel you. I wish you a happy birthday, though. I'm looking forward to 40. I like that number. 40. It's better than 39. 39. It's got such a 39. 40. 40's like 40. Right? You can't say 39. 40. It's a strong number. Bear says, cup of coffee in the big time. Indeed. Dr. Mask is here as well. What's up, Dr. Mask? Hope you're doing good. Jake Blue's in the house. And we also have, let's see here. I believe that's it. Rex Doom. What's up, Rex Doom? Says, I am the walrus. That make me the Eggman. Chrisix. What's up, Chrisix? Hope you're doing good. Thank you for being here tonight. Richie Cyberdupe. How you doing, Richie Cyberdupe? KEIR says, I just turned 40. Look at that. Alrighty. Hey, Spicer McLeroy. Getting in there right before I stop with the hellos. But please continue to say hello. And thank you so much for being here, Spicer. Okay, without further ado, let's bring him in. The man of the hour, Mr. KEIR Covington. What's up, KEIR?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
How you doing, chat? We're all 40. That's awesome. We're old. We're old men.
No way, man. Like 40's like the new 20.
I got gray hair, all like I'm going to look like Cotton Hill in another year or two. They took
distinguished. You know, it's said that you don't actually start to become wise until you reach 40.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can see that. I'm
your
a lot
crown
more...
chakra opens up and, you know, all that good stuff.
I've learned I am getting a lot more chill. Like, I'm not as high-strung about this stuff as I was.
That's what I imagine it would be. You know, you've lived enough life to hopefully be able to discern better. You know, right. what's deserving of your urgent attention,
my rage
and your emotion. Totally. And yeah, death metal. Yeah.
I'm probably over the halfway point for my life, so that's, you know, you start thinking about that. You're like, man, I'm probably not going to make it to 80. So it's time to enjoy things a little more.
You're going to make it to 80. Who you kidding?
Who you kidding? Oh, that'd be...
Oh. Chuck Norris is like 80.
I hurt
right?
already though. I got arthritis and stuff already. I'm only 40.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Knees and my elbows, everything are popping and creak. I stretch like I do, and I work out, and still it all hurts.
Don't worry, because the New World Order is going to fix you up like
Oh, that's
RoboCop.
right. Yeah, I'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, you'll be on lots of meds, and maybe you'll be kind of closer to being bionic, you know?
You see the
But
meme of RoboCop where they're like, "Man, he died, and they still made him go to work." That's crazy.
oh
You
man,
look at it and you're like, "Oh yeah, he did die, and that still made him go to work." That's crazy.
those corporations, man,
Man.
they'll do you. They'll do you.
OCP.
Now tonight, Kier, I want to talk to you about a few things.
Yes, sir.
But mostly I want to focus on your journey as a self-taught artist.
Okay.
And so I guess we could start with that. I mean, what led to that? Were you like a little kid always drawing, or did you pick it up later on? How did that
Absolutely.
happen?
No, I was one of those kids that was always, doodling on stuff and drawing and painting and, things like that. And my parents tried to promote that. So they would send me to like art classes and stuff. And I was that kid in class that would always win like the little art contest or have our stuff put up on the wall. And so I was pretty much always drawing. It wasn't comic books, but it was just, I would see stuff and draw it or see cool things or like RoboCop, try to draw RoboCop or something like that. And, it kind of followed me throughout everything. So, I did it through high school. And then after that, I went to my first college, and it was like, what am I going to do for a living? So my mom was like, well, maybe you should check out computer engineering, like AutoCAD. You ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this was back in like 2000, 2001. That was pre all the touchscreen stuff. So you still had to enter in a lot of code. There was no, Apple Pencils or any of that stuff. It was all code based. So I was like, this isn't art. I don't like this, man. So I did too.
Same thing with me with web design. I was like, this is just me typing in different language all day long.
Like you would create cool stuff because we was doing all the plotters and we were doing blueprints basically. So I was like, this is all codes, man, and this isn't fun. But I had really good teachers. So my second semester in those classes, I don't know if you remember, American Chopper was really popular at that time. And so I was watching that when I wasn't at school, and my teacher was really cool. So he let me design like motorcycle rims just to prove I could use the programs and not really do like a wrench or whatever they were trying to do. Like, you got to design a bolt. And so I would do like motorcycle rims just to show I could do that. So that was cool. So my wanting to do fun things was always there. So then that was 2 semesters, and at that time, we invaded Iraq. So then I joined the Marine Corps and dropped out of college. So I went and did that, but I was always drawing while I was, had free time and stuff like this. And then I got out and went back to school and got a degree in fire science and emergency medicine. And I worked on an ambulance for like 6.5 years out in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Scottsdale. And we were at the fire station, so I don't know if you've ever been in those. Once you do all your work and you're not running calls, you just sit around and like lazy boys all day.
Yeah, I've had a couple friends with that, yeah.
Right? So guess what I was doing? I was drawing stuff and doing this and that. And then finally I was looking, and I didn't want to do fire and EMS anymore because they call it burnout. It's usually like 5 or 6 years. People that don't stay in it forever, that's when they drop out. I was like, man, I really need to do something different. So I was like, what have I been doing my whole life? Drawing. So I was like, all right, let me take a look into this. So I started kind of researching on the internet, in YouTube, seeing like, how do you find artist jobs and how do you find like editors to email to. And I was in Phoenix at the time, so we had Phoenix Comic Con. I don't think it's called that. It's called something else. So I went there a couple of times, but every year Artist Alley kept getting smaller and smaller, and it was just more and more merch. So it was hard to find artists. Yeah. And there was no editors at that one. And so I did come across, what's his name? Joel Gomez. I think he's doing La Morta or something. I think that's what it's called. And I showed him some stuff, and he was like, "It's really good," but he didn't really have any information because what do you tell somebody? You're just kind of like, "Hey, keep practicing, do this." So I was like, "All right," and I kept in contact with him for a while, and then I was still searching around the internet, and I found on YouTube a guy called Richard Friend. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Richard Friend.
I'm trying to get him on this show, but he's being elusive.
Really? Yeah. I mean, he still works with the mainstream, so it's that touchy bounce. But he's excellent. He's an excellent artist, and he's a great inker.
Oh yeah, he's great.
And so at that time, he had a Patreon. He still does have a Patreon. He had a Patreon. So I joined his Patreon and got to know him. And
Nice.
he would show me this and that, and he would do stuff on Patreon and kind of give some tips out and this and that. And he was always like, "Well, you got to find editors. Those are the people that hire people. So you got to find that." But
around what time was this? Would you say? What year?
Oh man. So let's see. I got out. This was probably I started in 2018. Probably really looking into comic book art and started like researching and practicing more, basically doing pinups and different stuff like that, trying to get better and learn what makes comics fun, or at least what I like from comics. And looking through, like, Richard Friend did a lot of content, so I was able to learn quite a bit from him, because he would show like inking where he would just go on and ink stuff. And then I was just still cruising around the internet, and I found, I think, your boy Zach. It was Diversity in Comics. And I started watching his videos, and I was like, "Is this what the mainstream is? I wouldn't work for these people even if it was." And I started like diving in, because I was out of the culture war. I didn't see that stuff. I was working in Fire Station, man. I didn't see this. I knew like the diversity thing was really coming into the world hard, because we had a lot of diversity hires and this and that. And but I wasn't aware of like the culture war, so I was like, "Oh man, what is this stuff?" And he would mention like EVS and all of them, and I'm like, I don't know if I would ever get a job for one of these companies, because I don't fit any of their criteria. And then I started seeing some of the work they're doing, and I was like, I wouldn't want to draw this stuff even if I could. So I started following down like the Comics Gate, and then I found your channel and all these other people's channels, kind of like the indie scene. And I was like, all right, there's something here. And that's when I really started looking into the indie. That was probably like 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was following all of you guys and learning, and I was listening to people, and they were like, well, to really show off what you do, since there's not editors anymore to look at your portfolio just to see like in a couple of pages if they could use you or not, you need to do your own book. So I was like, all right, I got to figure out a comic book to draw, to see if I can even draw a comic book, and so I can have something to show. And I was listening, I followed all you guys on YouTube, so I was listening to Diversity in Comics, your boy Zach, and he mentioned at the end of one of his videos his email address to submit art. He's like, hey, I'm always looking for artists. Just randomly, I picked up on it, and I grabbed his email, and he was doing Expendables Go to Hell. And then I sent in 2 pinups, and he ended up buying them and putting them in the book. So that was like the first thing that I got put into a big, and I was like, wow, Chuck Dixon and Sylvester Stallone. I'm like, crap, I got 2 pieces of art in their book. That's awesome, And then Cecil, I think I did a piece, and it ended up in Cecil's book, Cash Grab, like a pinup. And I was like, cool, this is neat. I'm getting something. Somebody likes it. And then you did showed off King Cryptid sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, look at this, a new character. Very cool. And I listened to your pitch on it, and I was like, wow, this is neat. So I did a piece of fan art, and then I tagged you in it, and that's how I kind of ended up to this point, just on that journey, not with the draw. Everything else was learning comics, was just looking at what I liked and practicing a lot. I'm always drawing. You've seen I do work that I don't even show people. I'm just always trying to keep something going.
About that though, is there anything in particular, like any book, any character, any artist in particular that really inspired you? Did you go down the path of like learning to draw comics from looking at comics, or were you doing something else?
Okay, so that was just the journey to get from there to here. So with art, like the comic books, when I was younger, I tell this story, I got the first comics I ever got was from the Home Shopping Network. My mom bought me the whole run of the Death of Superman. It was on Home Shopping. They had it in a big bundle, all of them stacked, and
I
it came
remember
with like
that.
that came with
Yeah.
like the sleeved ones that were white and black with the Superman, and it was just because they had so many of them coming out. To find out now, they just made so many of them that they were selling them to anybody they could get rid of them. So those were the first comics I got, and I really liked it because there's I can't remember what book it is in the Death of Superman, but it's when Doomsday kills him, and it was an interesting way they drew it. Was that each page kept getting bigger and bigger. So like the panel, it started off with like 5 panels, and then it would go like 4, then to 3, then to 2, then to 1. When he's getting hit. And I was just like, this is a really cool way to tell stories, and it was beautiful art. And so that was the first like comics I got because I wasn't a comic book kid. That I was really like, this is cool. And then I remember when I was in the military, Sin City came out, and that was like the first time I was introduced to Frank Miller. And I was like, this was a comic book? Because it was based on Frank Miller's graphic novels. I was like, holy crap, this movie's awesome. We just went to see it, a bunch of Marines. But I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I went and found some of the Frank Miller books when they were in smaller print. I have the actual big damn Sin City now, the one that looks like a Bible, but I had all the individuals, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. This black and white, Marv and everything. It was just really cool. So that kind of introduced me to Frank Miller. So then I started picking up some names. So then it was like I found Jim Lee and just kept going down the rabbit hole. And I really fell into like Jim Lee's work. Obviously, everyone likes that. And I was like, wow, this is really good and clean. But talking with like Richard Friend and everything, I found that like Mark Silvestri, I was like, wow, I really like his style. And I was living in Arizona, so I was like, Todd McFarlane, I found him through his toy stores that were around. I was like, wow, this is some really good stuff. And it was just kind of a mix of all of it. It was never really just like one thing. It was just I found the things that really interest me, and I was like, I like this style. So you were asking me, I think once before, it was like, I don't know what style I am. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know where it'll end up going. And I'm not one of those artists yet with my abilities to be able to change back and forth like really good. I need to like focus in on what I'm doing at the time and not stray too far out inside the lane. And so that was kind of where I found comic books and that art. And then they released, I think it was DC released like the penciled versions of the books. That was really informative, so I could see the artist's pencil work.
Yeah.
And then they did the black and white, the ink version, so I could see the artist's ink work. So you could really get and see where it went from like pencils to inks to color. And there's a lot of information out there. I always tell people, I'm like, if you really want to find something, it's all out there. You just kind of got to search and see what you like. There's no set path. There's, everybody comes from different angles.
Totally. Yeah. So, and just even nowadays with YouTube as well, there's so many tutorials. There's so many, even if it's not a tutorial and it's just watching someone draw, you'll pick up on certain techniques and certain things. And you're like, oh, look, that's how they did that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, I remember a while back, there was a comic book store, or it was when I lived in Arizona. There was a comic book store in Glendale, and they would do like an art night just because they were always trying to have events to get people in. So there would be like artists show up, and we would all draw and stuff. And, I was trying to teach people what I had learned and this and that. And there's a lot. I mean, you can share. Just, I try to show my daughter and everything just to break down like people. It's like, it's all shapes, This is a can and a tube and a circle. And like, if you break it down like this first, instead of just trying to draw like a shirt, if you try to break it, you'll get that. And, which with now, like some of the stuff I've showed you, I'm trying to do more, get more into perspective, trying to throw things and, just try to move on. And so it's a fun journey.
Well, I'm glad you're having fun with it, man. I'm seeing a lot of great stuff from you, obviously, but I really love when you get into it and you're coming up with these crazy compositions that are just wonderful, like this kind of a thing of just King Krypton, like hiding in the trees and the bushes, and he's so still. He's got the butterflies just hanging out with him.
That was the idea when I think I just drew that one out of fun to show you, and I was like, what would I think? This guy's hiding in the woods, seeing the world. He's seeing the world. They can't see him, and he's so still. He's got the butterflies and everything. Isn't there a T-shirt of that running around somewhere
Yeah,
nowadays?
there is. I got it in the laundry. Otherwise, I'd be wearing it right now. I'm wearing it a little too much. But yeah, if you want to pick up a shirt, an all-over print shirt, we've got that on Alternasite and on the KingCryptid.com campaign on Indiegogo. But so even with this, it was great seeing it take on my own character. And what I really loved about it was that I showed something pretty minimal, and you went and you made your own take on it, and I thought you did better than what I did. And because of that, I was like, I gotta hire this guy.
Oh, that's what you got to do, kids. You got to outdo the people that make the thing.
Yeah, and as long as they're not, I don't know, my ego wasn't hurt at all, if anything, because I'm not gonna draw the book. I knew right then and there I was going to do like concept design, character design, that kind of deal for some of the characters, if not most of the characters. But sequentials, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to write it and letter it. And so I was looking for people to hire, but I didn't really put that out there in that capacity. And you didn't really send anything in to submit. You were just...
I was just like, having fun because...
I dig it, and here it is.
Yeah, because I mean, like, most people when they... go down the art path, they're like, I want to do it now, like I need to be, and I kind of got that out of my system going through the few times I went to Comic-Con showing art to artists and stuff. I was like, all right, this ain't gonna happen overnight. I need to chill out, take my time. It's not a rush to the end. I was just like, enjoy the time. So that's why I'm always drawing stuff, just kind of like, hey, there's something that I thought of and trying this out, and it worked out this time.
Did you get, other than Richard Friend, did you get any good feedback from anybody in particular that really helped you out?
I'm one of those people where I'm like, man, I don't want to deal with this. Cause like, I was always like looking at these poor artists sitting at Artist Alley. I'm like, dude, these people don't want to have to, like, they're being nice and I don't want to push it, but they're not gonna, here's my card, we'll get you a job. So I finally was like, man, I'm just going to stop bothering these people because it's not worth it. And there wasn't that many artists there anyways. And so not really. I mean, he was the only one. Like, I ended up talking with him on Patreon and this and that. And he's got a book that he's working on. So I was able to kind of see what he was doing. I think he's having Kelsey Shannon color it. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a really good book, Blaster Kid. But no, because I mean, it's the internet world now, so it's really, because I don't go to Comic-Cons and there's no, like, I've talked with you before about this. I was like, I wish the days were still around where like Image existed, because I listened to him tell me some stories about Image, and I was like, that sounds great. Like, you could have picked up a lot, like, as fast as I process stuff, being able to see these masters flying through all that awesome art they were making in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. That would have been a very good area to kind of percolate with people and get feedback and bounce off. But that doesn't really exist anymore. It's the internet. It's just kind of showing like the pinups or just the little fan art stuff I was doing to the creators and seeing if they dug it or not. And that was really it. I mean, that was always, if someone asked, I'm like, really, you got to play on the internet and show work. And I would show a few pages of like the book that I was trying to create every once in a while, just to be like, I can do panels too.
Yeah, that's really important. Show the work for the job that you want to get.
Right.
If you want to do interiors and you keep showing covers, keep showing pinups.
Right.
And vice versa.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, I looked at like pinups. They have their challenges too, but they're more fun. Like when I do stuff like that and I do the double page things just because I like to draw bigger, to me, even though we can shrink it down.
You mean like, where is it? It's in here.
Where's that big 4-panel one at? That was a big one.
You mean this one?
Yeah, this one. There you go. Yeah, that's the one I had out too. I was like, yeah, big double page spread. But I mean, storytelling's hard. I'm still learning that. I mean, that's tough to move the camera around, not just keep showing a straight on shot every panel. And then I'm looking in hard now to like try to move panels around. It can't just, I can't remember who I was listening to an interview from one of the old artists on YouTube, and they were like, just stick to like the normal panels until you get good and then start playing with panels. They're like, just do the basic stuff first and get that down, and then start goofing around with panel movements.
Yeah, it's such fundamental, obvious advice, but almost no one ever really starts that way, We all kind of bite off way more than we could chew.
Right. Yeah, it was all, reaching further than my grasp. And
yeah,
I was like, okay, that's pretty good advice. Yeah, it might be boring, but I was like, Jack Kirby really never used anything but kind of like the basic 4 panels, on a page or a big split. So I was like, all right, they can get away with it. And you can tell a story in those basic panels. And later on, you can move on to breaking borders and try to play with bigger things.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I guess my ability to pick things up quick from like just passing information on YouTube, that's always helped me too. And the willingness to be like, all right, I get that. I can accept that and move on.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I've noticed with you, especially when working with you. You have such a good attitude towards critique and feedback.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always said I'll never be one of those people that's, I've never met any of those artists, but I'm sure they're out there where they're like, this is how I draw, accept it. And I'm like, it's not going to be me. I'm going to learn. So I'm going to take all the information I can get, even if it's redrawing everything. Hey, that's the job. I can't remember where I heard that one time. I got that piece of advice from, who was the inker for Frank Miller on Batman, the Dark Knight?
You thinking of Klaus Janson?
I think so. I think he said something in the interview I saw too, where he had a policy of if any artist didn't like his work, he'd redo it for free. And I was like, that's a really good, even though I think there was a story where Frank Miller was like, this sucks, I'm just going to do it myself. And they got mad at each other. But I was like, that's a good policy. If, these famous guys can have that policy, then my lowly self is definitely going to have that policy.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is that we should be working towards making the best thing possible.
Right.
And being of service to the story, first and foremost.
Absolutely.
Because that's essentially then being of service to the reader. Mm-hmm. But I want to go a little bit back. There's something you were talking about in terms of getting advice and putting yourself out there, but you weren't really getting much advice from creators and things like that.
Right.
And I was thinking you would say that. And I think the biggest reason why a lot of that happens is because the creator doesn't want to lose a potential customer, right?
I always figured that too. And talking with like Richard Friend and them and stuff too, because I was like, man, once I started really looking into it, I'm like, this is a small industry. And then I started finding out about the culture war and all the stuff that was happening. I was like, it's even smaller. I was like, these people, if you do have a good gig, you don't want to lose it because, some of these guys that were doing the big stuff when I started looking into it, I mean, they were making like $200 or $300 a page, and inking it was like $150 or $200 a page. I mean, they were making pretty good money, so they didn't want to have anybody come in and like undercut them or anything. And I get that. Which now you get these artists, they're hiring people that aren't getting paid anything, and you can see in some of the work starting to kind of show.
Yeah.
You're like, they're not getting the best stuff. But yeah, I get that. And it's hard too, man. You get some random I wouldn't know how to handle that if I was sitting at a Comic-Con. Just some random person comes up with a book of stuff, and it's like, hey, you got some good stuff here. Work on perspective and try this and that.
Yeah.
And at that time too, I was doing only pencils, so that was like a rare gig because come to find out later, a lot of people had moved on to just doing the line art completely.
Yeah.
So they cut the inker.
And the colorist does a lot of the heavy lifting in modern comics.
There you go. Yeah, it's a lot of just bolder lines and then just color coming in there, no shading and stuff like that.
And if anything, that used to be the job that wasn't even... not to say that it wasn't difficult or it wasn't tough or anything like that, but they didn't do the heavy lifting.
Right. Yeah, I always assumed, looking at like Richard Friend when he would be doing some of his stuff, I'm like, the inker's getting the shaft here. This is the hard work. Like penciling's hard, but if you're good at it, they can whip through them pretty quick. But I was like watching him do some when he would show like the whole thing. I'm like, this is like 8-9 hours of heavy inking. Like, holy crap! I know the penciler didn't take that much time to
and
pencil.
especially to not bury the line of the penciler, not to bury their style.
Right,
and
he was
overtake
really
it.
good at each artist he got. He could match to it and enhance. But that's what I wanted too, because I was like, man, if I could get a good inker that could make my work look better, they could help boost it. Which he said he did. He said he would get a lot of new artists, and they would send them to him just because he was going to help punch up their work a little bit. So I was like, oh, and then I just kind of dropped the whole penciling thing. And I was like, all right, I got to do the inks too.
Yeah, and your inks are great, man. Especially when you lean into it and you start getting detailed with it, and you start putting the texture in, and you start getting in all the little spots there and really filling out the image. And I know with it is kind of trying to train yourself to be more old school in the modern way when you're working on these books with King Cryptid, because I'm going for an art style where the colors aren't going to do the heavy lifting.
Right,
you know, like Christian does great, but
perfect.
Your artistry there has to be on point with your pencils and inks, because otherwise Christian coming in with a relatively 2 or 3 tone color palette,
right,
it's not gonna pop, and the better you have the inks, the more contrast you have with that, the more detail you have on that level, the flatter, the closer to 2 or 3 tone tops colors should be. If you start getting really crazy with the colors and the inks are great and strong, all of a sudden the art's all muddied up and you lost all the form of it and everything. So if you're going to get painterly, so if you're going to get painterly with it, you got to keep the pencils and the inks looser and not there as much. But I feel like the art loses a lot. I love it instead when you got that inking there and you've got that definition that makes comic art pop.
This is like with the newsprint, and then this is very 80s and 90s, which is what was the fun, I thought was the fun comics. Once they really got into digital inking or color, it shot way over the top. Some of this stuff, it looks great, it's amazing, but I could see what you're saying. You lose a lot of the actual inked artwork there. And I always gravitated towards those books anyway. I love buying I think they're called Unwrapped or whatever, when it's the pencils or just the inks, because it looks totally different. If you've got a good piece of art, black and white looks great to me. Like I'm drawn towards that.
Yeah, all of a sudden the visuals, a lot of the time, they have room to breathe, and the storytelling becomes really clear. And I think then the opposite of that is then you get the worst combination of it, where there's no background and then the art also stinks.
Okay.
So the pencils and the inks are also just half-ass. That's the worst that can happen on the comic, because there's no background. They're all in like a void, talking heads, and it looks like incomplete rushed pencil ink. Type of, if there is any ink at all, because a lot of the time they'll just shoot up the level on the pencils to make them just look darker.
I've heard of people doing that where they don't ink, they just will, somehow they can do it digitally where it can turn the pencils into inks, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but
yeah, I mean, there's a way to do it, and there's a couple ways to make it look good, but I find most people don't make it look good.
It's probably tricky.
Something else I did want to bring up when it came to something you had said too about showing off your art and getting it out there. That's something else that people, so it's going to be difficult to go to the artist alley or to approach a creator and get a critique, especially an honest critique. How I've handled critiques in the past, especially in person, is I go, okay. I was like, do you want me to be brutally honest?
Yes.
Do you want me to make you potentially feel like you just don't want to do this anymore?
Well, I mean,
I'm getting somewhere, right? So I can read how their body language is, and they're like, yes, let me know. Or sometimes they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, you don't want to. I'm like, that's fine. I'll still look at it. But the next thing I do is then I ask them, you're coming to me because you know you need advice on something. point out to me what you're having trouble with, because you know what you're having trouble with, you know what you're struggling with, you know what you're spending too much time on. And then the conversation gets rolling there from the vantage point of they understand already. I'm not where I need to be. I need someone to tell me. So then it's a much more productive conversation.
Right.
But I find that there's not a lot, but too many people who they disguise wanting a critique with wanting compliments.
Gotcha.
And so then when you don't meet them with that, it's, oh boy.
I have never like professionally, if I say, like, had to deal with that in person, so I wouldn't. I mean, is this like online or is this in person, just in general for everything?
This one's in person, the way I would handle it in person, but I also handle it the same way. Like if someone comes on to when I do like a feedback forum type show or anything like that, if someone sends me stuff in a DM or anything like that, I usually find they don't want advice. They don't want a critique. They generally just want someone to say how great it is.
Hey, this is great. Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, it's tough to build up a. Yeah, I could see that, because I mean, if for me, I've always been drawing, and it's something I'm gonna do forever. So I don't know if I hold it like too sacred as like, oh no, someone told me it's not, good. So I'm all about like, hey, hammer me. I need to know so I can try to correct, or at least figure out what's going on here if I'm having a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe not from some random person online, but just yelling at me. But generally, yeah, you should want to get feedback, because even if you got to start back at zero, which I mean, that would hurt a little bit, but yeah, you should be able to take information. I mean, that's how I was able to learn on my own, is just being able to absorb information that I found. So getting it from an actual human would be even better, because they can see something that maybe I can't see.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, it's
become
good to
blind,
be
I
able
think.
to put stuff out there. If you're going to share it on social media, which I'm guessing that's where most of the people would be to share their stuff.
Yeah.
It's good to share that and get that out there and get the opinion of people, because they're more likely going to be people who potentially buy your stuff. So they're not worried about necessarily losing you as a customer.
Right.
If anything, they're more trying to tell you, hey, look, I'm not going to buy this unless it looked like this, maybe, or shaped up some of that, whatever it may be.
Right.
So especially when people are looking for advice, I know some people are like, oh man, if I do that, then I get trolls and whatever else. But you got to be able to discern from those
Right.
people too. If
That's
someone just
for
comes
sure.
along and is like, that sucks.
This sucks. You're like, all right, thank you. Have a nice day.
Okay. It's not exactly helpful, but if
No.
you specify you're looking for constructive feedback and things like that, or I'm a little wonky with the hand or the position here or whatever, then
Right.
you can get someone maybe can help you out or confirm for you that, or maybe even confirm that maybe it's fine and you're just judging it too harshly.
Yeah, going too hardcore.
Yeah. But that's an important part. And I find there's too many people who don't want to do that step whatsoever before they get to a point where they're selling their art and making that comic. And then at that point, like I hate nothing more than someone is done with an issue and then they want a critique from me. Because I'm like, man, you can't go in there and fix it now.
Oh, I got what you're saying. Yeah, like they've got a whole book to show you, and they're like, "Is it ready to go to sell on the internet?" And you're like, "Oh
Yeah.
man, you're gonna have to redo a lot of this stuff, and that's gonna hurt." Yeah, that'll dig in deep.
Yeah, it's like editing after it's done.
Gotcha.
It'll help maybe for the next thing.
Right.
So I'll let them know. Look, are you working on something that this advice can carry over, or because again, that's what I find is kind of like this in disguise. Trying to get a compliment about the work, but setting it up in a weird way. So there's all kinds of different ways to go about it that I think could help out somebody that's looking to genuinely grow.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is when you're in the zone and you're creating what you're creating, in terms of whether it's you're working for me, someone else, yourself, whatever. What is the part for you that is the most fun in terms of you're at ease, And what are the parts for you that you struggle with?
Uh, um, like right now, it's storytelling is where I'm struggling, and that's I've heard from a lot. I mean, that's the hardest part about drawing. Like drawing is obviously you got to know how to draw a range of everything, animals and hands and chairs and stuff like that. And you can figure that out with reference nowadays. You can find pictures and kind of get a reference if you need it. But really, storytelling's caught, because it's hard to translate from script to page and make it work good. That's a skill you have to learn, and there's no real like I bought a few comic book like how to do this things, and they don't tell you jack in those books. I don't even know why they sell them.
I
They
know
give
it's
you
the
a book.
weirdest thing.
It is. It's almost like reading some. I had a book on how to write a novel, and I'm like, dude, I'm like 300 pages in, and they haven't told me jack on how to write a novel, like to break down things or story arcs or you know sub story arcs where they're in the arc of the overall arc. Like it's crazy. So that's a tough one because you really are just trying to read something, envision it, put it through your blender, and try to put it on page. Which I'm lucky with your books, or at least the stories I'm doing. It's kind of in the woods, so that's nice. I don't got to worry about a lot of trying to create some buildings that I don't know what they were
Oh,
talking about.
yeah,
It
yeah.
they didn't really give me or something like that. That's you need to have a good dialogue with whoever you're working with so you can get information back and forth really fast.
Yeah, it's very rare. I don't think it's ever really going to happen where I'm writing a crowded city.
Right. Or
And
but
draw
just like
that.
in some of yours, like when they're in the lab and stuff, if someone doesn't tell you really what they want, then you're kind of on your own, and you're like, well, I don't know what's going to be in this lab, and some people would be okay with just say, hey, free range, do whatever looks cool, and then other people are going to be really specific, and so it's a
Yeah.
whole nother skill set is to learning to read scripts and then drawing what they want and try to get it as as good as you can instead of just pulling stuff out of your head when I'm drawing like my random big pictures. It's just like, oh, I wanted to see what this looks like and throw this over here. And so that's tough. And then just in general, drawing everything, hands are always a pain in the butt for me for some reason, and I work with them. So luckily everybody's got claws, so that's kind of can work with that more. And it's just everything. You're gonna have to work. I hate telling people, younger people are like my daughter. I'm trying to explain. I'm like, this takes a lot of time, and it's just like any other job. You're gonna have to put in work, or like if you're an athlete or anything, those dudes are working all the time to get as good as they are. And same thing with artists. It's not just a job where you go punch in and sit at a computer and look at emails. I'm like, you're actually having to use your brain and think and look up stuff and try to figure out. And nowadays you're on your own, so you're by yourself. You need to be able to be self-motivated to find those things and learn those things on your own because you're not in a bullpen where you could be like, hey, so and so, how does this work? And then they come over and whip it out for you real quick.
Yeah.
So I try to tell people a lot, you're gonna have to be self-motivated. It's a lifelong deal. We're not all gonna be like Rob Liefeld and be 19 and drawing this crazy stuff. I don't know how that happens. It's rare. So most of us are going to be doing it for a long time and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I think Kirby was what, 42 or something like that when Fantastic Four #1 came out?
That's what I read. He was like because that was one of those memes where they're like, hey, don't feel bad, man. Jack Kirby was like 40 something when Fantastic Four hit big. So it's like never stop. And he had think about how many books he drew before that.
Oh yeah, he did a ton of work.
Yeah. I think of that too. I was like, I tell people, I'm like, check me back after 10 books. Let me get 10 sequential books. That's the number I gave myself under my belt and see.
That's a good number.
If I've gotten better or worse or what's the deal. Because I've heard that happens with artists too. They could do great and then plateau and then it could fall off, or like Frank Miller, his whole style changed to a different style towards the end, what he does now.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Yeah, Kirby was 42, Stanley was 44.
There you go. So there's no age limit on this. If you love art, artists can be any age. and you're
Although
always
it
learning.
wasn't, Stan was younger. Stan was younger than Stan was younger than Kirby, though. I'm
Yeah,
not
because
sure.
he started in the office as like the inkwell kid, the
Yeah,
coffee kid so he was a little bit younger, yeah, a couple of years or something.
yeah.
Because those stories are always funny, Go get me some coffee, kid. Smoking on his cigar.
So I gotta tell you though, I really like working with you when I'm able to trust in your instincts as well, because you got some pretty good ones, man. Because like I give you the script and it's basically a story scene description.
Right,
You don't really, you're not seeing for the most part a lot of the dialogue, the narration, the whatever else that comes in after,
right.
because I don't want to impede upon what you're creating, and then you're gonna have to set up certain things in a certain way to fit whatever the heck I'm writing about.
Okay,
I'd rather find a way to fit my stuff around your art. And the
okay.
same thing goes for everybody else in King Cryptid too that
Gotcha.
works on it. But I really like that you're able to come in there and imagine how that scene's playing out and lay it out that way with very minimal revision, and it's not something I think everybody could handle. But at the same time, I was confident with it with you because of what you were just showing on. I mean, like you didn't do this. I didn't instruct you to do this. You just did it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you didn't do this because I was like, oh, do this type of a scene and put that together.
The
Heck,
other
even
side
the
too. Yeah, I
yeah,
was going to say the
yeah,
other side
even
too.
that as well. And then even the 2-pager.
That's right. That was just something where I was like, "Oh, this sounds fun." He's in a
Yeah.
swamp,
I was
and I
just
was like,
you knew the gist of the story and everything else, and then you just kind of put this huge thing together. And I'm like, dude, there's literally going to be that in the issue. And I'm like, we don't, that's 2 pages now. You don't have to draw because you already drew them.
And that was, and like I was saying, like even then, I still look at it as, even if you didn't use any of it, it was still just me being able to spend time trying to figure something out and see if I could even do it and get better. Every time you're going to get better. You're not going to get worse. The more time you spend, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
And so I was like, these were all, my whole wall's covered in stuff I haven't shown anybody. It's all just sitting up there. Big pages.
You got to turn the camera the other way.
Yeah. If I had my other one on, I could show you. I put some pictures on the internet, just like, hey, does anyone else got a big wall of art? They just stick stuff to their wall as they're drawing it just to look at. And it's practice,
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, I did like 32 pages for the Noble Savage book, but I'm never going to show that stuff because now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I can do better than this, and I got to tweak
Oh,
the
man,
so it's
you're
like,
not going to use it? You're not going to use them?
Not that.
Wow.
And I was like, man, the whole story, I could redo this because I'm not a storyteller. I'm learning that too. But I was like, it's not a waste to me because I spent that time learning different things, and I can use them somewhere else, even if none of that ever goes to print.
You could even sell them if you want.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff that I haven't. I kept all this because I'm still on my first comic book, so I still have all of that stuff. But yeah, I just looked at it and I was like, the story can go another way, and I think it could be better once I started looking at it. Because before I was just kind of drawing without a story, just to draw, and then I tried to build a story after I'd already drew some of it, and that's not a good way to go about it for me. So I was like, okay. So then I started adding pages at the front of the book and some at the back, and that was like, this is a nightmare. So it'll never, but it was really good experience. It's like 30-something pages. So there you go.
Yeah, I guess for you, I would give advice, and I would give this to any writer. Don't think first about writing it as a comic. Think first about writing it as a story.
Right.
So write the story for what that issue or that book or whatever it is going to be, and then revise and break down from there.
Gotcha.
And keep in mind that as you're writing that story and you're putting it, and just go for it. Don't think about editing it. Don't think about the page count. Don't think about whatever. Think about the story you want to tell. Think about what you want to convey, and then in the editing process, break it down and determine, all right, I could either tighten that, I could get rid of that, I could expand upon that, whatever that may be. and then get in there a third time and then start breaking it down page by page, whatever it is the constriction for the page count is going to be for you. And you'll have a much better idea of what it is you want to do. But you want to make sure you're always within the first 3 to 5 pages. Make sure that the reader is aware of the situation involved that's setting up the issue. There's people I'll read like up to page 11 sometime. Like back when I was looking at submissions, and I'm like, they sent in the first 8 pages, and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking like, well, it's well done, but at the same time, I have no idea what's going on, and it's 8 pages in. Gotcha. And then I'm like, can you send any more of this? And because I'm trying to make a decision here, and it'll be like page 11 where I'm like, oh, okay. So halfway through the issue is like the setup for the issue, but then now the issue is either rushed to get to the end or it's not enough time to tell the story properly.
Gotcha. And see, I was always having that problem too, because I went on a search trying to find like first appearances of people in books to see how you set up a whole world in like the first issue to get people to know who all these people are, what's the stakes of the story, what's going on. And I was like, this is hard, because I can't remember where I saw it, but it was like, get a beginning and an end so you know where your story starts and where it's going to end, and then you can kind of fill in the in-between so you'll have like the arc, and then you'll have like mini arcs throughout the stories. And so I was like, all right, it's the daunting task, unless this is why people go to school for this stuff. Because when you're trying to figure it out on your own, you're like, holy crap, this is hard. And I don't want to just have random stuff going on. But you don't want a book's first issue to just be like an information dump to try to tell.
No, yeah.
When you're dealing with multiple characters, it's like, holy crap, how do you introduce 20 characters in the first issue?
Yeah, that's why you got to whittle it down.
Just a main person that you're following, their journey through the story. And that's where I had the problem, because I had characters all over the place. I'm like, I gotta find the one person we're following. And that's where I found my story, where I was like, all right, we're gonna follow this person through this freaking story, because I messed up this whole thing. Just drawing cool stuff of Native American space Indians. I was like, all right, this is bad.
Space Indians, I love it.
Space Indians. It's a fun idea, they go
Indians in space.
In space. Native Americans in space, but they're not Native Americans. They're from a planet of just Native American.
Well, I mean, you're that's true to a lot of their own cultures. Right. I mean, that's a whole show for another day. But but that's true to their cultures. So many of them. There's no culture on Earth that's like they came from the ground. They came from the sea. Every single thing is they came from the sky.
Sky people.
Everything.
I lived in Arizona, and that's what helped me, because that's when I was like, I got to figure out a story to tell. And I lived in that, and you got the Hopi Indians and stuff, and they have all those crazy head masks of space.
Yeah.
And they believe in the star people.
And they have specific stars, all of it. It's never like, some dudes came out of a cave one day and said, hey, there's never anything like that. It's always that they came from the sky.
We started eating animal protein, and that's how our brains got big, and we knew about the star. I'm like, these people knew all this. This is insane.
Yeah.
So that's where I got the idea. And I thought it was fun, just something to draw.
No, I like it. Yeah, I think once you nail it down and once you get going with it, if you're ever having problems with it, just shoot me a question or whatever,
I said, I'm still in the infancy phase of trying to figure out, because I have the rough idea, and and then you can interject all these cool different planets. That was really the gimmick that I was trying to work in, was I wanted each issue to be somewhere else so I could draw new and cool stuff in every issue, and then having to deal with something fun, Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff. And so that was it was just me to get to play around with drawing.
Yeah.
And a good story, obviously, but really getting to draw different stuff on every issue. My own book. Because how could you be in one city the whole time? That's hard to draw. I don't know how Batman's done it for so long. Just Gotham.
Yeah, and especially with those cities, they have to make sure that they're staying true to the fictional layout. So it's not like you even have New York to reference, Right. You have to make sure that building over there in this fictional world.
That's right.
stays down
Wayne
over there,
Manor,
and yeah,
at least you got a lot of reference. And that was one of the things too with, maybe doing indie books or doing things with new projects, is that you don't get that big plethora of reference that those guys get. So you're going to have to work a little harder to create and work with the writer and stuff to try to create the new things, not what you got 5,000 issues of before you can go, all right, I need to go see what Gotham kind of look like. Let me just grab an issue of Batman. So it's more fun in the indie world, I think, because if you're working on a legacy character, you're restrained, man, unless you're some crazy dude like Kelly Jones, where they're just like, go nuts, man. Do Batman with the giant horns or swamp,
Well,
otherwise,
I mean, even then, he's mentioned conversations with Denny O'Neil about it being like, okay, it's a little, yeah.
Okay, so yeah. Or, they let Mike Mignola just do it your style. Go ahead,
Yeah.
So unless you're one of those guys, you got kind of like you're pretty much needing to follow Jim Lee's look on Batman. He needs to kind of look like this, is what I'm assuming. I haven't read any new comic books anymore. But
that's what I love though about what's going on with King Cryptid, is because I like what every artist is bringing to the table. Even lately, I'm like, okay, don't be influenced by Christian or Nick or Alex or Frankie or anybody else. Like, don't sit there and go, Pete's probably hiring them because he likes theirs better than me. No. I like theirs because I like theirs for the story they're doing. And I like yours for the stories you're doing. And if you start, aping theirs,
then you're just two of the same person.
Yeah, and then it starts turning into, but I wanted this specific look that you're bringing to the table.
Right.
For this specific story, and like a Cryptid, true to fashion, you're going to have these artist renditions that all look slightly different.
Something different. Yeah, that's sinking in. Yeah, now really. And I remember I've heard on interviews with other people, they're like, don't look like this artist. We already got that artist. Why would I hire another artist that can do the same thing? I already got an artist that's doing that. Like, give me something unique. And that's hard. I wouldn't know how to tell people how to find your own style. I mean, I guess it just shows up, because
it kind of does, you just got to
what you try to maneuver yourself towards. So
I find the style really shows up when you just try to, and this sounds weird, but when you just try to draw as fast as you can.
Right, free association.
Obviously don't do it on the final. Don't try to find your style on the paid work for the project. But when you're just kind of getting in the zone and you're doing your stuff, or you're just messing around with a character, a thing, whatever it may be, try to just work as fast as you can. Don't think about making corrections. Don't think about erasing. Don't think about any of that. Just keep drawing and get it down, and you got to do that a lot. But the more you do that, the more you actually start getting into this groove where you're training yourself to get comfortable with yourself.
Right.
And I know
like
it sounds
memory.
It's exactly like that.
The more. If you draw the same thing over and over and over, eventually you're not going to have to think about it. That's why I do so much work. Just for myself, is like, if you can keep doing it, something will start sticking, and you won't have to think about that. Then you can move on to trying to think about something new that you need to master, and burn that into your brain, or rewire your brain to where it's there. Because my daughter will ask me that too. She's like, how can you do this? And I'm like, I've just done it a few thousand times, and it's there, so I can do it really quick to show you, even though you can't do it yet.
It's all cataloged in your brain.
Training the way your brain's wired to do something different. Just like if I was, shooting a basketball forever, you're gonna wire yourself and your muscles to be like, all right, we're doing this.
And eventually that depth perception is there, that amount of strength, this, arc, whatever, over and over and over and over again. And it's the same exact thing with whether it's art and drawing, or whether it's writing.
Writing, that's what I'm saying.
And the thing is, too, with the writing, people are like, well, what do you mean? And that's what I was talking about with writing the story. Don't think too much about trying to have, all the logical conclusions of everything, and making sure there's no loose ends and it's perfect and everything else. And, get it down, get it out there, Get it out of your head, no matter what, no matter how messy it is, no matter how much it doesn't make any sense at first, let's say, and get it out there, get it down, and then reread it, and then rewrite it, revise it, and then break it down until it's so not perfect, but it's being told in such a concise way that there's no loose fitting elements. You're not sitting there because you'll see yourself writing it out, like how many panels are you going to have where this person's just thinking? How many panels are you going to have that just focus on nothing occurring?
Right.
So you don't need every single thing. You can have something occurring. Something should be occurring. Don't waste that time. Don't waste that space.
Right.
The page real estate in every single book is so precious. And then if it's someone like that you're hiring, if there's a budget involved and you're not doing everything on it, even if you are though, but especially if you're not doing everything on it, you're hiring people. If you're blowing up that page count and you've doubled your book, and just to have what feels to you like better pacing, it's more spread out.
Right.
You don't need that. So you just doubled your page count, doubled your budget, and you made a more boring experience.
Gotcha.
But only every now and that should be used sparingly for effect, to have, maybe a page or 2 pages where it's a slower pace to show some kind of sense of the story really slowing down. There's an emotional buildup as the story slows down. Mm-hmm. If it's just slowing down because it's slowing down, that's bad. That's bad writing. So you want to make sure that every single, when it's ramping up, there's a lot of things going on, that ramps up the reader's attentiveness to the events that are occurring. But when there's page or 2 or whatever, where things are slowing down, not a lot of movement is occurring, you're zeroing in on a scene, then all of a sudden it's because of the fact that the reader is supposed to become absorbed into the moment. And why? Because the next thing that's occurring is gonna get them. Yeah.
This is all tough stuff to learn on your own. Like, there's no books that are just, or maybe I didn't find them, but I'm like, you should write one of these books and sell it, because I never found any. And it's like, that stuff, it's hard to try to learn that,
Yeah.
And me looking at it from the visual side, in passing through all the things I'd heard someone say, like, you should never have to write and explain something in a comic book. You should be drawing everything. They should be able to see. You shouldn't have to have words, is what I heard somebody say. Like, everything should be on the page drawn, and then you're adding words and stuff in later, but you're not telling people what's, happening in the page. They should be able to see it, kind of.
Yeah. The visual storytelling should totally be there, you know, and
that's where I kind of focus.
But the thing I find that's really bad advice with comics as opposed to filmmaking is people do the whole, show don't tell, right?
Right.
But comics are show and tell.
Both, right.
But you just don't do redundancy. So you don't do, the guy's running down the hall with a caption, and he ran down the hall.
And he ran down the hall. They did that back in the old days.
Yeah. Where everything was like a serial radio narrator.
I could hear the voice in my head of the guy saying it on there, And then he ran down the hall.
Yeah. So what I mean by show and tell is that as you're showing the storytelling visually, you will be telling the story in a way in which adds depth to the story, adds a nuance, adds context. So you can have a character thinking about something. You can have narration that paints a juxtaposition of what's occurring. So you can have something where the narration maybe is talking about something thematically that's occurring. You can have something more alliterative. Or you can have something that's more in terms of when there's dialogue and exchange between the characters. You can have it where it's giving context to the scene. So you're there's so many tools to use in terms of the tell in comics. And I find that a lot of modern comics, especially maybe the past 20 years, 30 years, really have leaned so heavily into like the show don't tell aspect of it, that you can read a lot of these comics in less than 5 minutes and still feel like you didn't really get what the hell that story was.
Gotcha. I haven't looked at a newer book. I don't even know what's going on out there. What's happening in the world now with newer stuff?
Yeah, and you get there's to me there's two kinds of books. There's almost no in between. They're there, but they're not really prevalent. And you get the ones that it's just the writer is it's they should have just written a novel.
Gotcha.
It's just the art isn't even needed because it doesn't matter. There's just so much writing. And then the other side of it is there's almost no writing, and the art is doing such heavy lifting that you flip through that book in 2 to 3 minutes, you're done.
Just looking at the pages. Oh, this is
Yeah,
pretty. All right.
and it's
see,
like add the
that's the
depth
kind of
with
guy
that
I
writing.
was. I was just looking through the book at the art. Like I was like, the story. Well, So I don't know. I was one of those bad comic book people where I'm just like, I'm just here to see the pictures. What do they look like? And never really. And then maybe later I'll go back and read, the story. But it was really, I was like, I'm just here to see cool artwork. And I'm a bad comic book guy. I've heard that though. There's people that are into it for the story, and then there's some other people that are into it for the art.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, generally speaking, I think what happens with that is because the story just really isn't that great.
That could make sense.
Yeah. And it's not to say that every single thing I'm going to write is probably going to be great to someone. I'm trying to make it as great as I can. But my writing, I view it as it's of service to the art. It's of service to the art, and it's of service to the character and the story first and foremost. It is not of service to me. And what I mean by that is it's not time for me to show off of how great of a writer I could be.
Right.
It's about me saying, does that sentence, does that word even add the correct context and emotion to the scene that I want it to add? Does that make sense for it?
Yeah.
And so you go in there, and eventually it all just like drawing, just like anything else, eventually it becomes second nature. It becomes more and more easier to do. But at first it probably is going to be a little painful for some people because they're going to think, more is more or less is more or this or that. There's no such thing.
Right.
Enough is enough is what it is that you're doing enough. As long as it's serving the story, it's serving the character, it's making sure that the proper thing is being told and conveyed. Because the art sometimes does, and it should, do a lot of that visual heavy lifting that's going to communicate what's occurring to the reader of who's who, where are they, all this visual information that's there.
Right.
But the writing is going to give them that depth that the visual sometimes maybe can't give.
Yeah, because you're getting a snapshot in a comic
exactly.
book. You're getting a snapshot picture, right? And, an artist has to try to find that perfect moment in time, they say, for that.
Exactly.
So you need all that other information that you just can't get in that snapshot.
You can't move the image. You can't have a sound and a visual and a soundtrack and this and that. You can't have
the movie.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you can't have something being said that is off the panel from a different character unless you write it. So it doesn't just exist in the ether and the reader should just assume someone somewhere is saying something.
Right.
So everything has to be there, but it has to be of service to the story. And that definitely it's not easy, but it gets easier. So when you're struggling with stuff in terms of your story, I would definitely recommend doing the same thing you would do when you're getting used to the art, right? You talked about working the fundamentals and doing the basic panels and and it's the same thing with
wheels.
yeah, and it's the same thing with the writing. And even if you don't turn it into a comic, when it comes to the writing, focus on even just a story that you're writing out that's about the character doing something. Think about you ever see, and I have a love-hate relationship with the show, but Primal.
I don't think I ever watched it. I know the show, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Okay. Well, in Primal, there's hardly any dialogue.
Okay.
That's the part I hate because I do like dialogue when it's good.
Right.
But in terms of the writing, you can sense that the writing, there's a ton of writing because the writer would be conveying how the scenes are playing out. They don't maybe turn into dialogue, right. But there's writing and emotion that's playing out visually, and there's the story and the plot that's playing out that has to be written to give direction, to communicate to the artists that are making it. The visual, it's not a comic, it's a show. So, again, they have a little more to work with to land that emotional punch. But the writing that's there to bring across what's being conveyed, that is the thing that when you write something out, even again, if you don't put it to a comic, you'll get better and better at it. So if you're to accomplish something, and then think of what's stopping them. And that's it. A very simple type story. Main character wants to accomplish something. Something is getting in their way from accomplishing that thing. Right. And then set that up, what that is, and lay that out. I find that and that creates conflict, which is necessary to story, and there's too much of it that doesn't happen nowadays within storytelling, so a lot of the time, you ever watch anything or read anything where you feel like, I don't know what the hell they're after. I don't know why they're existing. I don't know why I'm paying attention to this, because nothing's happening.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen some of that where you're like, what the hell, what is this? Like, I don't understand. And I was, like learning these things too, because I would always, I've listened to what you say too, and it was like, all right, well, I want to make a comic, that's, I forgot what you call it. I don't want to just make one graphic novel or like everything. For some reason, my brain, because I've watched so many movies in my life, it's just, I see everything as like a movie, not a comic book that's continually, I want to do like King Cryptid, where it can keep going on as long as I want it to. So it was like, how do I do that? Because everything, for some reason, I'm wired for movies. It's just kind of like, all right, I can do it all in like just a graphic novel and that'd be it. But I want it to actually be something where I can work on it continuously. And it's like, man, that's tough, because then you got to keep everything going, subplots and the overall arching plot from beginning to end, and then in each one there's got to be
It'll develop, though. It would develop over time. Again, that's it's easier said than done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything's easier said than done.
You gotta trust the process. And sometimes it feels like, I don't know what that process is.
Right.
But the process is just doing it. And that's the thing, when you're coming up with your story, really hone in on the characters involved.
Right.
And the rest of it will start telling itself. And that's the best thing I could say to you. Like, even when I'm working on King Cryptid, focusing on King Cryptid and focusing on the character involved. That's King Cryptid wants to do something, that character wants to do something else. Generally, they're at odds, but sometimes they aren't. So like in the story with Brug, with number 4,
mm-hmm.
King Cryptid is just, he's just spending the day chilling in the cave. He's just going to use it as a meditative rest day. And then there's a scream, basically, that he hears in the ether that wakes him up, and he goes to where it is. And, Brug is in the swamp, but Brug isn't doing anything to King Cryptid. King Cryptid is actually going to what he thinks he's doing in terms of helping an individual. So there's all these different things at play. What Brug wants is, Brug definitely wants things within that issue. King Cryptid is more, he's you could flip it on the end. King Cryptid's actually kind of the antagonist.
And he shows up. Why are you messing with me?
He shows up, and he wants to stop Brug.
This is my swamp.
Yeah, from doing what he wants to do. So it's that way. But you impose a morality upon the situation and go, okay, well, King Cryptid's still the good guy, Brug is still the bad guy. But the thing is that there is no morality imposed upon that situation. It's just, you read the story, and if it's being told right, you're rooting for or against one of them.
So you could do Cobra Kai and turn the whole story from Brug's perspective of.
You can turn it, upside down.
You could do that story.
The
inverse.
Exactly.
He showed up to my swamp, and I was just trying to get some food. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Hit me in the face.
And that's the fun of storytelling, is that once you have certain characters already in play, like King Cryptid is the constant. The world revolves around him,
Right. Through his eyes.
in the series, yeah. So once you've established that he is the moral standard, and you can trust in what he's doing is the good thing, then it becomes easy to, I don't want to say it in a mean way, but you're able to manipulate the situation and manipulate the reader into thinking whatever this character does, because this is the world and we understand that they are good,
Right.
that everything else that they are up against is bad.
Right.
But now sometimes there's stories that can take place, and we've already done it in the first 4 issues, where there isn't necessarily a morality imposed upon those other characters sometime, but you read into it as if there is until otherwise told differently. So there's all these different elements that can get laid out, and certain characters, you look at like Victor Lugo and you're like, I don't know about that guy. I don't think he's a bad guy, but he's definitely not a good guy.
Right.
And then you can build upon that kind of a thing. And I could either make him more sympathetic and really humanize him and make him very understanding and relatable and turn him into this character that people just go, oh man, this dude's just doing a job, or I can do what I'm going to do and ramp up him being the biggest a-hole in the world.
Perfect.
So people are like, that guy? Yeah, I don't like that guy.
You gotta put him in a cage.
Exactly. So there's all these different things at play that can play out, and that's when it gets really fun, is when you're sure of telling the story you want to tell with the characters that you have. But sometimes there's different options. There's always various forks in the road, and you're choosing certain ones, and there's not like there's a right one or a wrong one.
Right.
But you hopefully want to tell the most entertaining and insightful one, and I think once you have your characters nailed down, it'll be easy to do.
That's a tough one that I was, started to put some thought into. It's like, man, you have to really sit and think and know these characters. You got to know you're creating them. So you need to know everything about them, what they would do. Are they going to turn right or left? Are they going to do good or bad? Like, you have to sit and think about each one of these characters. So it's probably best not to start off with a giant roster of characters where you're trying to diversify them all. It's like, that's
build
where
it up as it goes along.
Was like, all right, I got to backtrack into this, where it's like we got to focus on one person and then just bring other people in. You can sprinkle in who they are as you go along, but you can really focus on one. Just as a beginner, like a pro could do whatever they want and have 500 characters in their book and flesh it out, but as baby steps.
No, they can't do that either. They should do the other way too.
Yeah.
Even think about it, right? Think about every time, like when they do these type of movies, and you get it, they do it every time. The first one, they're maybe just up against one villain,
right?
And the second one, there's 2 or 3. And by the time you get to the 3rd or the 4th or what, there's all these extra characters and extra villains and subplots and this, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my lord, they're just telling snippets of plots.
Right.
Nothing is really hitting the way it should.
It's
Yeah. So and they all tend to do that. And then all of a sudden you'll have the thing that they have currently, where there's so many characters and they want to fit so many in and everything else that, oh my. So it's not one of these things where I would advise going in there and having it rushed into that situation. Because even like think about team books, not teen, but team. Like X-Men.
See, that's where I was like, team book is what I thought of, and I'm like, holy crap, this is hard to try to introduce, because unless you got something simple like Fantastic Four, these are these people that got hit with this stuff, and bam, now you're in the world.
You gotta have really strong personalities fleshed out already. Almost like they're just cookie cutter archetypes at first, and then you can build nuance in later. Because if you don't have these strong personality types already off the bat, it's going to become really confusing to the reader. Think about like Ninja Turtles. They each have their own identified personality in terms of how they'll react to a situation. They would each react, all 4 would react differently to a specific situation. So you can have instant plots, instant, interaction like that because of it. But if they all relatively thought the same,
right, Who am I going to
why do you...
identify with? You're right, because thinking about that, I'm like, the Ninja Turtles. That's a really good one. They did it so well that most everybody can pick one that they identify with. Like, that's who I would be out of the
Yeah,
four.
yeah.
Like, and that's
You
really
know,
good. It's simple, and it's like, bam, I can identify with this guy.
and that's the funny part too, is because that's the thing that we should be looking towards in entertainment for quote unquote representation.
Right. Yeah.
Is it should be about the not the superficial, but what's underneath, the
Exactly,
personality type.
These guys are four turtles.
Yeah.
Mutant turtles, and I identify with one of them as just because
Exactly.
Who do you identify with? Mine's Raphael.
I've always liked Raphael.
Ray.
But as I get older, I like Michelangelo more.
Well,
but and again,
you
I
would be more of a
love...
Splinter. That's who I see.
What is that?
Information and the way you're coaching things along and inspiring people.
And I think that's as we get older.
We all turn into that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Father, right? Wisdom father figure. You're right.
Yeah, because when he was younger, he was probably closer to the way they all were.
Exactly.
But that's the thing that's great about that dynamic. And that dynamic exists with a lot of different kinds of ensemble casts that work really well. You look at like Star Wars. Luke, Han, and Leia are very different.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And you can tell, bam, like these are simple. That's true. You look at it and everyone's like, oh, it's too, we need to do something. I don't know. Did you watch like Tenet? I didn't know what was going on in that movie. It was so over my head. Did you ever?
Which one? That? What was the movie?
It's called Tenet. It was a Christopher Nolan's movie. It was just so
no, I didn't see
far
it.
out there. I was like, holy crap, this thing just blew right over my head. But no one liked it, so I wasn't alone. But yeah, no, basic stuff's not bad, especially if you can identify with someone, you get a good story. Like Star Wars is really basic if you think about it. It's not a
it's super basic. Yeah, the actual
story.
Yeah, the actual focus of the story is super basic. It's just family problems.
Family problems. You still get something out of it. You identify with someone. You get a message that's good, not some crazy message nowadays, but like.
Yeah, I mean the oldest, most intriguing stories of all time, a family with secrets.
Uh-oh.
That's it. You know how many stories are a family with secrets?
Yeah,
it's like 1,000 of them.
It's all of them. The best ones are the ones that people remember.
Yeah, every mythology, every soap opera, every huge superhero property. Every single thing. Family with secrets. Yep. All of a sudden, you have everything Shakespearean. You have every single thing that just... That tale is as old as humanity itself. And yet, people go back to it in one way or another all the time. And the more that you stray from that kind of... Because a million ways you could tell that story.
Right, they do it like The Godfather. Boom, family with secrets, but set into the Godfather world. You can interject it anywhere as long as it's a good, Game of Thrones, family with secrets.
Yeah.
In a mythical whatever world. It's
exactly. Every superhero book, family with secrets. Because these people have secrets. And the people that are around them, that are closest to them, are family. Family with secrets. So it's like, who can you trust? Who can you not trust? Right. And someone finds out about that secret. Now what do they do with that secret? It's all that kind of stuff. You can define heroes and villains based on how they handle finding out that information. So it's there's so many things you can break it down. But I think like we're trying to, as storytellers nowadays, there's so many things, and then there's a lot of other things in play that are making these changes and whatnot being so forced in terms of the corporate aspect of it. But in terms of trying to make a character relatable, trying to make a story resonate, it's all this stuff is the same things. It's as old as time. We all resonate and relate to the same stuff for forever and ever. It's just it's like a Rubik's Cube, but you're not trying to solve it. You're just trying to come up with the craziest combination you can come up with. But no matter what you do, those little things on there, the pictures, the colors are always going to be there.
Always going to be.
They're never changing. They're there. So it's like however you want to mix up that Rubik's Cube, come up with your story. They
Yeah,
should make one like that. They should actually put like little, personality types, and then you just like one
hey,
side of
there
it.
you go.
That's your
Instead of
character. Next, mix it up.
boom.
That's your
This is
character. Yeah,
this is what we're writing today, right here. There's
exactly.
the next one. You could sell that, market that. That's great.
Right. Story that has, whatever it is, misunderstood,
Right.
whatever, all kinds of different things.
People say they do that with like a whiteboard. They'll put a bunch of random and then just start sticking things. That's
Yeah.
what it's going to be today, combination
Yeah.
of those. No,
It's-
and then, with writing, becoming like a noob trying to write and stuff, you don't want to, there's so much stuff out there. It's like, man, you don't want to do something that's already been done, or you want to try to do it in a new way. So it's a tough gig. I get it. It's a whole new arena. You're in a whole different learning curve than the rest of us.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But you'll get there. And,
Yeah, if you keep
just
trying,
it
you
up.
can do anything. There's no limitations. Your mind is your only limitation. You can do anything if you put a
Yeah,
little
'cause
brain matter into it.
The hard part isn't the creation aspect. The hard part is making it all make sense after you've created it.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, refining it to where it makes
Yeah.
sense.
But if you get intimidated by the creation aspect, everything else is lost.
Yeah, it's
So
tough.
just be free, be creative with what you're doing when you start
Right.
off making the characters you're making,
Yeah.
and do your best to know them as well as you possibly can. You're not going to know them perfectly. You're going to know them even more over time. But then and
Because it
then
was
go
like,
at it.
if I don't know them, then how is the reader supposed to know?
Yeah.
I did it all wrong though, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing stuff. So I drew all these characters out on.
Yeah, we always do
Intricate and
it.
just went way
All of us do it
too-
wrong.
So you could look at it and say, man, you wasted a lot of time, valuable time. But then I was like, well, I can use it for other things. I
No,
was
yeah.
learning.
Well, the thing is you learned a lot. You learned a lesson that a lot of people don't do till after they spent a lot of money.
Right. Well, I was lucky because I could draw it, so I cut anything out of that where it was like I can control all of this because I'm not doing anything with it except drawing. So
Yeah.
I didn't get it lettered or colored or anything like that.
Yeah, you didn't put out a bunch of issues and then you realize, crap, this is a mess.
This is a mess, and I look bad, and this is terrible. I was like, this is not. I'm gonna redo all of this and go a better route.
Right? But yeah,
This
you
is
never
not-
would have got there unless you did what you did. And
Right.
and now that you've got there and you could learn from it. That's what's so great about, I think, you being a self-taught artist as well, is you're bringing in that mindset too with your writing. And then you can grow and learn from those mistakes quickly.
Right. Yeah, and I'm in no rush, so that's good too, because it's not like I'm under the gun for something. I didn't sign on to write somebody's book or something. It was just me tinkering, so I was able to, just like with art. Like I said, I've been drawing for ever, so it was just an evolution of over the years until I really got serious. Probably 2018 when I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And
Yeah.
everything. I always tell people you need to love what you do and then spend all the time you can doing it.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, you're not gonna, move forward. And don't feel bad. I've got, probably 2,000 pages that I haven't thrown away of stuff that's just garbage that is never gonna see anything, and it's just like,
There you go. Yeah.
And then I stopped drawing mainstream characters, so all that crap's down there, all the mainstream crap. It's never gonna see the light of
Hey,
day.
it's good learning experience, and maybe put that out there, sell it, get it to people.
I've got it, the new mindset. I'm trying to look forward. So I was told that's probably why I'm glad that I didn't do anything with that book, because a lot of people are like, you just got to do this stuff and put it out, otherwise you're going to tinker with it till you die, and it's never going to be perfect. But I'm glad I waited on with that, because I was like, I got to tinker a lot more. But with art, I'm trying not to go backwards as much. It's always like, I want to do something, let's do the next thing, I try to move forward, but not stray too far from anything
Yeah.
that's working, because I don't want to go like Frank Miller and be like, what the hell is this that he's drawing now? This is crazy. I mean, it's cool. It's a style, but he was a different guy. It's gotten
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that is
He's sick.
age and
Yeah,
things like that. And
that's what I thought. I was like, this is probably the best he could do right now, so I gave him a break. But I was like, you could see a transition because he was like a house style Marvel kind of artist to whole different.
oh yeah, well,
There he
it's
is. Like, wow.
I view Frank Miller like Picasso.
Yeah. Yeah.
Picasso when he was younger was unbelievable.
Right.
Unbelievable representational artist in terms of, just ridiculous what he was making when he was like 12. And then he broke down whatever it was, got bored of it, broke it down further, wanted to explore something creatively,
Exactly.
and then turned into what people, know him as with all the cubism and everything else. But then as he got even older, turned into this very like loose, you don't even really understand what is being represented here, breaking down the shape into practically just a couple lines and this and that and whatever, and you're like, what the hell happened? But
it's a
to
journey,
me,
though. Yeah.
it's just it's one of those, if anyone in comics, and a couple of them have, but if anyone has earned the right to put something out that doesn't look as good as it could,
Right.
it would be someone like Frank Miller.
Yeah, I think we need artists like that. That's pretty cool to be able to look back to, like some of the 80s stuff and be like, it started here. And then he did, Sin City was a totally different look. And then, The Dark Knight was a totally different look from that. And then I think, what was the other one? Ronin? That was like all over the place. And 300. So it was cool to watch. We need artists like that to push boundaries and have fun with their life. Not unless you're working for the man and then you got to do like the house style, like this is what we're doing.
Yeah, and if it doesn't appeal to you, you don't need to buy it. It's as simple as that.
So that's why I have all of his stuff, because I was like, this is very interesting for just looking at an artist, seeing how you can just go through a journey and not stick with just one thing. Because I'm pretty sure like Jim Lee's probably going to be drawing Jim Lee forever. Like that's his style and that's it. McFarlane probably the same way. Like that's the style. It ain't changing.
Yeah, and even both of those guys, very different art when they started off, even in their professional careers.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't even recognize it. You show them and you're like, I don't know who that is. And it'd be like, that's McFarlane. And you're like, that's McFarlane?
Yeah.
Doesn't look like anything I'd imagine Todd McFarlane stuff to look like. Like a lot of the stuff he did on Infinity Inc. Same thing with Jim Lee on a bunch of those early issues of Alpha Flight when he was on that. It's not bad, but you would never in a million years guess it was those guys.
Right. I always hear a lot of artists, or at least I've heard a lot of the professional artists are like, I wish I could get rid of all those like first books and just don't look at them, because we all got to start somewhere, unless you're just some like genius right out of the box where you're just like, wow, this is how your brain was formed. But everybody else is like, don't look at the first stuff, it sucks.
Well, the thing that sucks about a lot of the prodigies out there is that usually they tend to peak right off the bat.
That's like their level.
Yeah, then they can end up getting crushed by that because they can't get past that, Gotcha. So then they're like, what do I do? And usually it's like, okay, well, I'll start reversing, and then to stand out from where they hit. And it's like that within music. It's like that within art, and even
too fast, I guess that could.
Yeah, and because there's so much, and that's the thing, man. There's so much outside influence where people are like, oh, you've plateaued. Your stuff still looks the same. Oh, okay. It's just, don't listen to those people. If you're doing great and you're right off the bat and you're a teenager or you're, starting off in your career and your stuff looks amazing.
Right.
The worst thing that can happen is you start second guessing every single thing you do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I never understood that because it took so long for me to get anything, that looked like a comic book type art. So it always amazed me with those cats that came out and you're like, crap, these dudes were all like, just out of teenager 20s.
Yeah.
And they were doing great. I was like, were they drawing like hardcore or did it just come naturally? I always was curious about that.
Yeah, right.
Like, I think like Michael Turner, like all of them dudes were like great artists and they were young.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Everybody's different. So
Yeah, everybody is different. And I think sometimes some people, it's a legitimate thing of wanting to grow and push past their comfort zone or their boundaries or get creative with something.
Hmm.
And then other people, they get intimidated by whatever, the reviewer, the company, the editor, the whoever
Gotcha.
it may be, that just is, kind of doesn't really sometimes have their best interests in mind, you know.
Big companies,
They
yeah, that would be tough
lower the
on.
star power and the ego a bit.
Yeah, they killed that. The 80s and 90s guys destroyed that. You're not gonna be a star, man.
Yeah, it's that whole Hollywood thing, like you're not gonna work in this town
Yeah,
again.
we're gonna keep you low because and there's probably I've seen a lot of great artists online, and you're like, I don't, they're not working for Marvel or DC or
Oh yeah,
doing anything. There's a lot of great art. The internet really
most of
opened up the world. It's like, wow, there's a
that's
lot
the
of artists.
just the crazy thing is that most of the best artists in the world, even comic book artists, most of the best comic book artists in the world are not necessarily working for the biggest companies.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So it's just it's a whole wide world out there, and
It isn't. There's a lot.
yeah, like you said before at the start of the show, there's so many different paths to get to where you want to go. You don't
Right.
have to necessarily go down that one road and work for this specific company or on this specific character
No.
or on that specific book. There's so many different ways you could go about it.
Yeah, I could have, once I started looking into the internet and stuff and seeing how the industry was going, that could have been the end of it, and that would have been all of KEIR's comic book adventures. I mean, because I could have been like, well,
Yeah,
there's no point here, but you can just keep moving around. It's
exactly.
like what Rocky said in your intro, man. You got to take the hits and keep moving forward. Just always push on.
Exactly.
Even
'Cause
if
the
you're just
only other
drawing at your house, you could have 50 pages of a book just for yourself to learn.
yep.
It might pay off later. You
Yeah.
never know.
Even people out there, when I was starting off, especially, and I used to do a lot of work for free, I didn't do it for exposure. If anyone's out there working for exposure, you're an idiot. And you're
Yeah.
not an idiot because you're getting taken advantage of. You're an idiot because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as exposure. No one's
Yeah.
going to see your crappy work, and you don't want them to see your crappy work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those, like, if you're working for free for exposure because you suck and you're learning, you should be working for experience. You don't want that exposure. You don't want people to see all your crap when
Do
you're,
the bad stuff. Right.
doing bad stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like I'm glad that, I never, until I was ready to draw something, and, you found my work. Because, before that, that would have sucked. Because it could have been like,
Yeah.
oh, this is terrible. I shouldn't have taken that deal.
Well-
This was,
Yeah, and the thing is, when you're good enough, you can command getting paid something. And then, the better and better you get, the more in demand you get, and then you can get paid more and more and more. And that's how that works,
supply and demand.
But if you never went out there trying to learn, because the thing is, you're either going to pay for an education,
Right.
and that's how I saw it. I went to school for graphic design, and that was already enough for me. Half the damn degree I taught myself. Reading the books and going online and looking up tutorials, because the professors didn't teach much of anything. But after that, I was like, well, I want to get into comics. I don't want to go to school again, And I was like, well, I could just work for experience. So it's like I'm, getting a free education.
But getting the experience while. Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I looked into, a long time ago, I looked into the Hubert School in, what is it, New Jersey and Dover. But I was like, people are still going to this just to get mainstream type jobs. I was like, it was like 40 grand.
Yeah.
You had to have like a lot of stuff. And I'm like, it's cool that they've got like, they'll have professionals come in and do this and that and all that stuff. And I love those guys, and his sons are great artists and everything. But I was like, man, 40 grand and having to go to there to do this. I was like, you can do this stuff on your own.
30 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, that's a good investment, to get into. And obviously the tuition was less and everything was less, so proportionally.
With a different industry.
It was a different industry, different people coming in to,
That would have been different. Like, I guess good point. Like, when I was looking, I was like, there's no way I would pay that to try to get a job at this joke industry. But back in the day with the different people, the 80s, if that was going to give you a leg up to get in the door with these dudes right after school, then okay, yes, I could see paying.
Yeah, I mean,
learning from
you're
them.
having, legend after legend essentially coming in.
Exactly. That would have been a totally
Yeah,
different ball game.
that's different.
But
Nowadays, it's like,
I was like, dude, these kids aren't getting jobs, and even if they are, they're going to be getting like $30 a page or something, and they're going to be horrible stories. They're not going to be these impactful, cool, remembered stories. The death of Superman, or anything bad. They're going to be not good, and it's not going to be what you think.
yeah, I'm waiting until they try to kill off Superman again.
Haven't they done that? Like, what's the deal?
They probably
Everybody's
have.
different. I get with the thing of playing with the same characters, you got to keep trying to push the boundaries, but
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, there's things that this is going back to what we were talking about with writing before. You don't need to do certain things with the characters to get the point across, to get the every story you tell, it should be set up thematically in a way that you want to elicit an emotional response from the reader.
Right.
What is that response? If it's Death of Superman, you're trying to elicit this kind of response where the reader is like, "Oh my lord, what's going to happen next? Now that this character is dead, like this is a really important dude."
Exactly. This is the cornerstone.
Now what?
What now?
Yeah. So if that's the whole thing, obviously you could still find a way to, and they could have handled it, because the Death of Superman wasn't what bothered me as much as the aftermath. They could have, but they milked it for everything it was worth in terms of setting, it all up, even though it was like, 2 out of the 4 were definitely
we know
not.
He's coming back.
Yeah, he's exactly, so when he's coming back and it's being set up that way, and then the whole like he's pure energy sort of thing, and in the blue, it's just no, no, you could have done it a different way.
I to be honest with you, like looking from their standpoint of these characters that have been around for 80, 90 years, it's like, what do you write that hasn't been done already? That's an insane. I wouldn't want to be put to that task. What am I gonna tell that hasn't been told, or like this character hasn't gone through already?
Yeah, because I mean, to me, that's when it comes to, like with King Cryptid, there's so many characters I want to inject into the story over time.
Right.
That's why I know I have at least 100 stories to tell. But I'm sure once I get to 100 stories, and introducing more. 50 characters, let's say, that's even more stories now that I could tell, because now these characters, there has to be ways to interact with each other too.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's different places to go. So you have different characters, different settings, and there's different ways to have them all interact. There's different things to do within those different settings. There's more than enough. I could be dead and gone if I wanted to pass on King Cryptid to, 5 more generations of writers and creators. That could be a possibility, because there should be that much laid out within what I'm doing. So when it comes to not understanding about, to me, it turns into, it's been so burnt out and mismanaged, because it's become so corporatized.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Where,
not the storytellers, it's the company running them.
Exactly.
I've heard people say that about like Batman, that they're like, everyone's got a story they could tell. Like everybody could come up with a story, but it's just been mismanaged so badly and boxed into corners and stuff, which is why they do all the multiverse and all that crazy crap. They're like, crap, we're boxed in. We need to go to another planet.
It's crazy. It really is. It's absolutely crazy. And it doesn't need to be that way. And it never really should have been that way. But it's as soon as these companies aren't comic book companies, and the titles aren't just the title being made, it's not the character, it's not the story. Once it becomes bigger than that, it becomes a thing where you have this series and that series and the other series, and then all these different other things, and merchandising, and then you get investors involved, and then you go public, and then you're owned by a corporation, and then it just turns into the last thing in the world on the mind of any of these people is essentially, how do we tell the best story possible?
We're just trying to keep the name so that it doesn't go to the public or whatever. So we're making a story to keep it in our company. It
largely just ends up turning into, let's just make something. Can you just make something today? Just make something.
We make more money on T-shirts and movies than we do on the book, so who cares?
Yeah.
Just keep them going.
Yeah, so the very, very basic of it, the simple fundamentals of, you know, worrying and wondering about the characters involved and the story and the plot and the things that good storytelling revolves around. And it's ironic because of the fact that those are the exact same things that you need in play to have something successful.
Yeah, people do.
But like you said, if that's not really the concern, because the bigger concern is these other things, to me, that's why I really wish that, to be perfectly honest, I wish the corporate mainstream would just die. I wish it would just stop publishing new stuff.
And, it's coming. And because there's no avoiding it.
Yeah, it's obviously at a different place, and and any of the very talented creators that are there right now doing what they're doing could easily tell their own stories with their own types of characters, and that's it. Because the corporate side of it is so ingrained into the other aspects of being an entertainment media company that the comics are like the last thing, and it's very obvious.
They might get traded from company to company just so they can disperse their losses or whatever and move money around and stuff, but they're not gonna. It's not. I don't even know where to go where I'm at to go get new comics. Like, I wouldn't even know where to tell you to go.
And where would you start? You know, yeah. So it's on that level too. It's
a dead machine.
Yeah, because if someone were to start reading right now and go, where would I? You know, where should I go? I'm gonna. And I know many people do the same. I'm going to point them to various back issues, storylines, you know, classic trades, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's not going to be like, oh, just start reading the issue that's out now.
Jump in on Spider-Man,
which is what whatever. It should be.
It should, because you should be able to jump in and jump out and jump again. But yeah, no, you're not. Even the places that I've seen when I've looked, they're all just old stuff. It's all just back issued stuff, which I'd rather get. I found some amazing books, X Factor, a whole bunch of cool stuff from the 80s and 90s back, and those are way better, man. They look cool. That's the style that I like. I wouldn't even know how to get a new comic book. Maybe their website.
Yeah, every single thing, that the answer to the question of, well, where do I start? I'm a new reader. Where do I start? It should be whatever issue just came out. That's where you should start.
I wouldn't give my kid one of these books nowadays. I wouldn't even know what's going on. Like, these aren't the comic book people and they don't match up with the movies, which is what everybody knows.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you...
Right? And it's going to get to that point in the movies. Oh man, there's so many and I don't know. And how do I, where do I start? And it's not going to turn into the conversation of, well, just go see the one that just came out. It's going to turn into, oh, well, you should start on this one. And you're like, that one came out like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Why would, what, like, who does that going into the movie? And you're like, where should I start? Like, even horror franchises that had like 8 or 9 or 10 in there, you don't necessarily have to go and see and all in order to understand what's what and everything else. It's in the movies, the most you would have got before is don't see the sequel, maybe see the first one. Yeah, but like most of the sequels, you could have still just saw those. You didn't necessarily need to see the first one.
With like Marvel movies, my kid knows like Captain America and Iron Man and stuff like that, and the Hulk. And I'm like, if you showed her the stuff that's out now, it's like none of those characters are there. It's like, where's Tony Stark at, or where's Captain America, or where's the Hulk? Like, they're all different. They changed them all, so it's like they don't match up. None of it works.
Yeah. I mean, I could think about like when I was a kid with like Batman the Animated Series and a lot of the other shows. It didn't matter. I didn't see Batman the Animated Series from the first episode, and even if I did, it didn't detail the origin of Bruce Wayne and Batman and his parents getting killed. I'm pretty sure the first episode was the Man-Bat episode.
Okay, yeah.
I
haven't watched it in a long time. I think
right into it, so it's just one of those things where whatever is out, whatever the newest thing is, should be the thing where that's what you get into. But that's not the way it is, and it's because the storytelling has become so convoluted.
Yeah. So what's the last movie that you've seen that was like major? I haven't been to the theaters in forever.
The last one I saw,
I gave up on movie theaters.
I'm guessing you mean recent? The last recent movie?
I was just saying, like, the newest big movie. I watched The Flash.
Okay, I haven't seen a superhero movie in a while. The last one I saw, I tapped out at Thor Ragnarok.
You didn't like Thor Ragnarok?
No, I was done after that.
You're done after that one?
I was done after that.
Yeah, those movies are... Well, then you would have hated the fourth one then. That movie sucked.
Yeah, and it wasn't even because, oh man, I thought the first two were so great. It was more that the third was just so, to me, I was just like, if this was Lego Thor, I probably could have got around, a lot of the tone.
Being fun and
crazy. Being just,
not
ridiculous,
Right, it wasn't Thor, yeah.
But yeah.
They tried to that was the problem with the Thor ones. Like the first one, you needed the origin, so you got all that junk. And then the second one was real dark, and he was kind of Thor-ish. But
and the second one wouldn't have been so bad if it was pre-Avengers.
Gotcha.
Because to me, once you get the Avengers involved, it's like,
why are they not here?
Why are they? Yeah, why aren't they here? This is a thing that's
a big deal,
threatening the Earth.
It's a big deal, right? I loved in some of the old comic books where I had that same thought. I'm like, this is like an event where you would need all the dudes, but they would throw in like a quick page of like Thor shooting by Tony Stark where he's working in the thing, and he would talk to him for just a second and be like, you need me to come along? But Thor would already have left. So they would at least acknowledge, hey, these guys are aware of what's going on. They just ain't helping this time. But yeah, your movies, you're like, this is a world-ending event. Why are they not here?
Yeah, exactly.
These flying helipad things are about to kill 1 million people. Why is Tony Stark not alerted to his machines up here doing this crap?
Yeah. And even in some of the comics, it was always a head scratcher for me, depending on certain things that would occur. But sometimes they would really get in a big event kind of vibe, so you would have an X-Men thing, but then eventually there'd be like the Fantastic Four coming in, or the Avengers coming in, Spider-Man's there, whatever it might be.
Right.
But and that's the same thing with Death of Superman too, that really kind of drove me nuts, was that I'm like, so everyone shows up when this dude's dead. Where were half of you guys?
Exactly.
It's not like Doomsday just like plopped right on Superman's head from space, right. And like there was no build up to that
crazy thing happening.
Yeah, and they do explain a couple things of why certain people weren't there, but it's one of those like, you could have had a bunch of people be there that should have been there.
That should have showed up pretty quick, right? Did you ever read the Batman No Man's Land run from the like 90s? That was kind of one of those. It was a big like massive run, and like it was Gotham City got hit with an earthquake and shut down everything, so it was no man's land. And they did work that out. Superman did show up, and Bruce was like, man, you can't fix this, Boy Scout. And he tries, and it shows him trying, and he's like, I can't fix this, I'm out of here. And he leaves. And like Joker and all of them have taken over different parts of Gotham.
Yeah, they got it all,
trying to help people put water back on, but they're all just fighting, and he's like, I can't work with these people, I'm out of here.
Isn't that's kind of like what the basis of that Arkham City game was?
Probably,
I think.
Yeah.
Because they all have their different little aspects of Gotham.
Yeah.
But
which was a cool idea.
Yeah. And
the Joker, they all would run in different parts. The Blue Boys, the Gordon's guys were running a part of the city. And it was a good. Those were good comics, even in the 90s. They were making good stuff.
Was that in the 90s or was that in the early 2000s?
They redid it. Somebody went through and they redrew it, because I bought the whole run in a graphic novel. It's like 5 different ones, and they did re-release it with some other artists on it in the 2000s, I think. But it was like a 90s book. I've got them. I can't remember it. But anyway, it's a fun story if you ever read it. It's a whole big run. There's chapters before it and after it. So. But that was fun comic book. It was good to read. Like Superman showing up and trying to do it, and he just can't. He's like, all right, I'm out of here. You win, Bruce. Have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Luke says Endgame was more prophetic than they realized. Yeah, it's
that was it, man. They probably knew that was the end of it.
It's very, very strange the way that it feels like we're not really going to have isolated films in some respect. You know, like they're gonna be there, but it always feels like, are they trying to make this thing into some kind of cinematic universe? You know, everything is,
Right.
even that whole thing, the Universal monsters that they tried to do again,
Yeah,
and
with the
that
Mummy,
it
Tom
just
Cruise
never,
did
yeah,
the Mummy. That was
kept
actually a
not
good
working
movie.
out.
I
Yeah,
thought it was a good movie just to watch as a one shot. I'm like, hey, I like Tom Cruise. It's fun. No,
but
I get what you're saying. Like they can't, yeah. Because even like with the Joker, that was a cool movie, but now they're gonna make more of them. But I was like, that was just like a good one-off movie. Bam, you got a story. It's a Joker story.
yeah, and
And
even
there you go.
that to me, it felt like, okay, you know,
Yeah, it was just kind of
I,
like a here you go.
I think people, I don't know, maybe people did genuinely enjoy it too, but I think looking at it, if I had to really guess, I would think that people were kind of like, wow, this felt like more of a breath of fresh air
Oh,
because
because so much
everything
crap.
being in a
Right.
certain way, but it wasn't as good as I think some people
No,
thought it was.
no, it wasn't like the I've watched this 100 times because it's my favorite movie of all time. But it was better than all the crap that was coming out at that
Yeah,
time, you know.
it was a
And
good character piece, you
yeah,
know?
I think that's why Top Gun Maverick did so well. 'Cause it was
Yeah.
just like a back to the old way of making movies, but it's so different than what they're making now, where you're just like, hey, everyone liked it. It's just a popcorn, the good guy wins movie. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Movies are rough. I don't go see them anymore. I wait till they're on
No.
TV.
Yeah, I really don't either. I mean, the stuff that I watch now is I just keep digging and digging back into the past.
Old stuff. Yeah.
70s, 80s, 90s, you know, even a couple things maybe from the early 2000s. Once it hits like 2010, it starts to get real difficult. The pickings are slim.
Yeah. The CGI add in for like I like action movies. They went
Yeah.
crazy with that. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And all
Cuz
my
even like
heroes were gone. Sly and Arnold and the people I liked watching growing up for action.
yep, agreed. I'm serious. I'm trying to think about the most recent movie I saw.
I liked the
And
new Dune remake. I thought it was okay. It made me interested to see the next one, so that was a good sign for me. I'm like, all right, I want to see what the next one's gonna be like. For Dune.
yeah, man, I can't even
I always watch the Avatars too. They're the
every
same old
single
type
thing.
movie, but I like watching them.
everyone in the chat, maybe you guys can jog my memory, because no,
Yeah,
I didn't watch Dune.
you didn't see the new Dune?
No, I didn't watch that. uh yeah, I dig Expendables. Looking forward to the next
Oh yeah, the
one.
new four. Yeah, and the four. That one. That should be
I'm
something.
looking forward to seeing what is that, Outlaw Johnny Black, Michael Jai White.
Huh.
Yeah, you ever see Black Dynamite?
I have seen that. Yeah, so it's that they're doing something. Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of like he's doing a Western with that kind of vibe. It's kind of like almost
Okay.
like a send up of Blazing Saddles. It looks like that kind of a vibe, where it's
Really?
got that kind of, you know,
Did you see?
satire to it.
Do you remember Bass Reeves? You know, Allegiance
Yeah.
comic was doing. You know, Paramount's doing a show now, but it's like they did the comic book. It's probably not tied with the comic book, but now Paramount's doing a whole show on Bass Reeves, and it looked just like the comic book. The images I saw, I was like, damn.
Wow.
How do you get into that with the like? I don't think you can own those, right? I mean, I guess you could because that's like a story from 100 years, over 100 years.
That's yeah, that's tough. You know, if
It
they
looks
took
just like
any,
the comic book. The guy.
the only reason that they could if they were able to go on it at all is if they worked in some kind of story that was, you know, sort of
Same as
fictional,
Right.
inspired
Okay.
by,
I
and
think
then
it's
they were
true
mirroring.
stories. I think they were telling them kind of.
But
I think
yeah.
the comic book probably was they were doing more loosely. I think the Paramount's probably going to follow his life more, or at least.
Yeah.
But it looked a lot. I was like, wow, man. Hopefully they sell some comic books off of that.
Right.
Like we were here first.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
I agree, Luke. Joker movie didn't need to be a Joker movie. It's like Falling Down, King of Comedy, Taxi Driver type of film.
Oh, absolutely. That's it. Well,
Yeah.
it was those movies all blended together. It was yeah, pretty much.
You
the
could have
same
just
guy.
called it like One Bad Day,
Yeah,
and don't have him do a clown makeup thing or whatever. Just, you know, that's it.
yeah. They just interjected Joker. into a
and,
story.
and it would have been funny, and I don't think they've ever done this in comics, but you know how a lot of movies are based off of a short story or a novel or whatever,
right, like Total
and they'll
Recall.
change certain things. Yeah, like Total Recall, Die Hard, They Live. Funny thing with Die Hard too is they pushed it past Frank Sinatra first to get him for McClane.
Really?
Because Sinatra was tied up in something where he had first right of refusal for this character, because the character was basically in this story that it's such a weird convoluted story, and I'm gonna screw it up, but go read about it.
I know
Sinatra,
the novel was different than the movie.
Yeah, so the novel was
his
very
daughter,
loose. Yeah, the premise was still there, sort of, and then adapted for the 80s, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, so it'd be funny if the Joker movie, let's say it was One Bad Day, if it was like based on, the Killing Joke or something, let's say, inspired by, based on, whatever. The same way that you would have these various movies play out and be based on and adapted by a short story or whatever it is, that not really necessarily close to it, but the core plot structure is there, and they did it like that. I mean, that would be more interesting to me, to see them come across something like that, and it's like, oh, based on this thing, and it's like, oh, it's like nothing like that. It's like that with a lot of those sort of things.
Don't let Hollywood take freedoms with anything. If there's material out there they're using, they need to follow it to the T, because they mess everything up. That was
every time. I mean, same
good
thing
in
with
book form or something.
Yeah, same thing, like Blade Runner is practically nothing like Android's Dream of Electric Sheep.
Right, the short. Yeah.
Isn't
it the same guy that didn't he do a lot of short stories?
Oh yeah, Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't like a short story necessarily, but yeah, there's all kinds of things. What is it? I think They Live was like 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that was the name of the short. So there's all kinds of different things. But yeah, Total Recall was the short though.
Right.
I don't know if it was the same title though, but
no, it was called something else, because it was something. Something.
Oh yeah, it was something like Memories or something for Wholesale or whatever that is.
Right.
Do
you think he was in the recall machine the whole time? Because the music starts playing at the end when he's on Mars with the air going. Do you think it was all just?
I don't know. I
recall implant.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of different interpretations people have done. I always just kind of took it at face value.
Like he was actually okay. Because they left it. I remember watching something where they were like, we left it open like that to let people come up with their own conclusion.
There you go. Thank you, Paul. We can remember that for you, Wholesale. There it is.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I always took it at face value that he was living this life. They subdued his memory or whatever, and they were going to activate him when needed.
Right.
And once he kind of got activated, it turned into this whole... He doesn't want to go with the plan.
Right. Yeah, because could you see Arnold just being that big out of nowhere? He wasn't lifting weights. He just worked in, construction or whatever, and he was Arnold Schwarzenegger size. That ain't right.
At least he wasn't like the biggest he was. He wasn't like like Conan the Destroyer.
Conan the Barbarian. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this guy's not quite just the average Joe.
Yeah, the Arnold movie was like maybe the first like 20 minutes or so is close to the story, but then like the rest of it, there isn't anything as close to like that whole action thriller part that's in there.
So what about the new remake? Was that closer to the story? I never read the story.
That's what Luke is saying here. I couldn't sit through it because of I just thought it was horrible.
If that movie would have came out on its own without the other one, because I just enjoy the 80s Arnold,
I definitely went into it just looking at it as, objectively.
This isn't as good as the other one that sucked, but it's still better than this one, so.
Yeah.
If it would have been its own thing without the Arnold one existing, maybe I would have liked it better. Yeah. Seeing that it's more true to the actual story. But come on, Mars. There's a blue sky on Mars.
Well, if they give it an atmosphere, absolutely.
Yeah, it was
The
man.
thing that's strange about that is that the gravitational pull once they
Oh yeah, the
leave,
core thing or whatever.
it would totally be different because Mars is small.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
Venus
you're
is
right.
almost the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
size as Earth, but Mars is like what? I think like a 2/3 or something like that
Yeah,
the size
it
of
is.
Earth.
Yeah,
It's
my
pretty
kid has those
small.
posters up. It's a lot smaller. Oh, so when they melted the core of ice or whatever, is that what you're saying? It would be different.
Yeah, yeah. And so They Live was combined of two sort of things. It wasn't a comic originally. There was a short story within a comic, and Carpenter was inspired for some of the elements by that as well. It's that whole thing. Like, there's all these different sorts of stories involved with how they come up with the films, you
Okay.
know. But yeah,
Doesn't it feel like that's happening right now? They live
oh yeah. Well, I mean, when
something.
I talked to Roddy, he was like, "Dude, that is a documentary."
I'm like, doesn't that
That's
feel
what he
like
said right to me.
it actually is something happening where it's like these people can't be normal humans? What's going on?
We were talking one time, and I'm sorry, we're gonna wrap up the show real quick at 2 hours.
Oh,
Good grief,
sorry.
love talking to Cure, but we were talking one time, and he was talking about how he wanted the chair to be a springboard for his movie stuff, and he really
Okay.
wanted to. He thought it would be great. He's like, I see a lot of stuff like shades of They Live in this. He said, where it's kind of talking about the subtext of human beings and the darker element, and you can't really trust the reality being presented to you. And he's like, I really like it. And he's like, and then we're talking about that, and I was talking about how much I love They Live, and that it was really funny he said that because we were watching They Live for like the 20th time. And that's when, because Eric Roberts originally was cast to be Roddy's part, but Eric couldn't do the role based on production getting moved, and Eric's schedule's crazy busy, so he couldn't do it. He dropped out. They Lives on TV. We're watching that, and I'm like, what about Roddy? He'd be really good in that role too, as the lead, the guard that's kind of on the more sadistic, brutal side, but then also playing up the other side of the reality side of it, being that he's just a regular dude, who's just kind of tired of this nonsense, of being this guard on death row. And so we were like, yeah, why not? So I was telling him about that, of what led me to reaching out, and he was like laughing, and he goes, man, They Live, he's like, that was a documentary, man.
He seems like he was a cool dude.
Yeah, he was the best, man. And
It
he's
does
just
though.
going on, and he's like, if you look at the stuff in that and you pay attention to it, and he's like, if you've seen it 20 times, he's like, he's like, I don't gotta tell you. He's like, but he's like, everything in that is real.
I don't doubt it. Obey, consume, like all. It's just, oh. That was a cool story too. I mean, it's a good. Obviously, it was the '80s, or but it was still a good. It's a good movie.
Yeah, and something else he told me. He's like, John might say this, people might say that, and he meant Carpenter, of course, right?
Mhm.
So he's like, it's not about consumerism.
Oh no,
No. I thought that was interesting. He's
really?
like, it is about the powerful that we are not aware of having
Yeah,
the power over us and wanting us to feel like we are powerless.
which they're doing a very good job at.
Yeah. And then honestly,
Get that?
to be perfectly honest, when he passed away, Roddy wasn't in the best of health. He was a cancer survivor too, and
Okay.
he was pushing himself too hard,
Oh yeah.
and that was just Roddy. But like when he had passed away and he had a heart attack, but the first thing I could think of was, man, I hope they didn't get him,
Oh yeah. No.
because it's weird. There's a long history of these people who, like, they die of a heart attack. I mean,
Right.
Philip K. Dick, same scenario, a stroke, And allegedly the story is that he met some guy, bumped into some guy, felt a sharp pain after bumping into this guy,
Oh yeah.
because he was being monitored by the CIA for a while, Philip K. Dick. And eventually got hospitalized and then died in the hospital of a second stroke. And
They do that.
yeah. So
I mean,
there's a
stuff
lot
like
of
that
weird.
actually happens all the time. I mean, the Russian government does crazy stuff like throw
Yeah,
acid
and then
in
they
your
have a
face.
heart attack, you know,
But no,
that kind
the
of a thing.
CIA, they were doing crap with that. They would extract like seeds from the ocean and could inject you with it. It would start your heart. And they had like that gun. They were shooting people
Oh,
with a heart
yeah,
attack gun. And like, this isn't people. People get whacked all the time.
totally, you know. And
And
it's not
nowadays,
even.
they don't like to do that. They like to come at you with cancel culture. That's their
Oh
new
yeah,
way.
nowadays they just they it's
Deplatform
character
you
assassination. It's
like
far less
Russell Brand.
messy. Yeah,
Exactly. He's off of everything. Within like
yeah.
3 days, he's gone from the internet.
Well, because if they do it the other way around, you turn into kind of a martyr,
Martyr. They don't want that.
and
No.
people really, you become a legend.
Yeah. Nope,
People
just
look into
disappear.
it, but the other way around, they're like, "Oh, that dude's horrible.
Yeah.
I don't want to have anything to do with him."
Character assassination. It's
Yeah.
that's
And
how
then
it
by the
works.
time you find out, oh, that wasn't the way it was.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no.
It already accomplished what they needed to accomplish.
I think everybody sees that nowadays, though, so it doesn't work as well. But it
I
doesn't
wish
matter.
everyone saw, but
A lot of people do. I think most people are just like, I want to just live my life. I don't care. Let me move forward. But
yeah,
most people see it and they're like, yeah, this ain't right. But what do you do when all the big companies are what you use? YouTube's like, nah, we're not paying you no more. And PayPal's like, can't use us. Your bank, they're like, no, we don't want your money no more. Like, you're kind of, what do you do?
yep, yeah. But yeah, I thought that was really cool with Roddy talking about that because I was
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, because he's like everything in that. He's like only a very small part of that stuff. When I got the glasses on,
Yeah,
you see things about buying stuff.
yeah.
It
was just
most
part
of it is
the
about control and is
control.
about keeping people oppressed without them realizing that they're oppressed.
Because they'll revolt if they know.
Yeah.
So you got to keep the wool over their eyes.
But he's like, yeah, all these people they talk about is just about, all the consumerism culture
No,
and this
no,
and
yeah.
that. And he's like, it's more
Those are
than
just
that, a lot
signs.
more than that.
That's awesome. Oh
Yeah.
man, I missed that. I remember watching him too when I was wrestling.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, he would have been a great voice to have nowadays with his Piper Pit podcast. They probably would have canceled him by now, too. Let's face it. They would have canceled a lot of
Does
people
anyone
who've
watch
passed
wrestling
away.
anymore? I doubt they allow. Those people aren't talking about anything.
Yeah. No.
If you're The Rock, you're asking for money for the Hawaiian people, even though you're a multi-bajillionaire.
And you're like, oh, I'm going to give him $1 million out of my like $200 million
Yeah, okay.
net worth.
I
That's like-
fly from
yeah.
California to Hawaii every night so I can sleep in my own bed and then fly back to California to film the next day. But I don't have any money.
It's a weird world, man. Well, yeah, that like I said, we've touched upon a bunch of things tonight that are like we could talk 5 other shows.
Sorry, that's not the. Anyways, work hard if you want to become an artist.
Absolutely.
Go hot. It's all about how much you put into it.
That's the thing. That's the thing is that, and that's even essentially what Roddy was telling me with all of that is basically, don't let people take that power from you. And it's the same thing with this, is that when you're being a self-taught artist, you don't need to have someone tell you that you can't do this thing with your life. You don't need to have someone tell you that, oh, it doesn't matter, don't work as hard as soon as you buy into that, as soon as you buy into the whole concept of it doesn't matter how hard I work, nothing's ever going to work for me. It doesn't matter, how much I apply myself, it doesn't matter anything. The whole system is against me. Yes, now the system is against you. It sucks. And there's going to be days where you're like, man, what the hell? I should just give in. Believe me, I've had those days too. But like you gotta do your best to dig deep,
Right.
man, because it's tomorrow's another day. I know it sounds corny and cheesy, but tomorrow's another day, and just get out there and try to take ownership on everything you possibly can in terms of what you can do. And that's the thing is going down this path, being it's a journey. Like it says right there in the title, the journey of the self-taught comic artist, and
right.
it's all about that, and it's going to be a journey. And on any journey, you're going to come across things that sometimes you're like, man, do I turn tail and just run back, or do I keep on going and persevere?
Oh yeah, I could have exactly. Once I found out how the industry was and that I was probably never going to get a job being a comic book artist in the mainstream, if I didn't pivot, luckily I was able to pivot to independent and be like, okay, there's a whole group over here I found that could have ended it right there. So always be able to, be fluid like water, be able to move with whatever's going on and figure it out.
Totally. Yeah. You got to be able to adapt,
Yeah, that's
and
life. Be able to adapt and overcome anything.
yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you look at it and go, man, I don't understand it. That worked 5 years ago. Well, it's not 5 years ago. A lot of other things have changed,
Yeah.
So, and whether you like it or not, things are always going to change in some capacity. But it doesn't mean you just got to lay down and take it.
No.
And if anything, that's what people in certain positions that want you to be under their thumb. They want you to do that. So what better way than to kind of be like, you know what? It's still my life, and I'm still going to do the best to live it to the fullest and do what I want to do with it. And if the day ever comes where I'm not able to do that and it's taken from me, so be it. But until that day comes, I'm going to keep on trying to kick life's ass every day. And the thing is, the funniest part is if we all do that every day and you don't give in, the day never comes.
Right.
We have to let them take it from us. We have to be willing to give it away for them to take it. That's the funniest. If every single person was like, nope, they could do their best, they ain't taking that from me.
Right.
Then that day never comes. So we can't. As soon as everybody starts to give in and you start to feel like, oh, I'm hopeless, I'm helpless, I'm powerless. That's when all of a sudden, before you know it, self-fulfilling prophecy, and then there it is.
Oh yeah. Don't start thinking that stuff, man. You got to be positive. It will change the way you do that. And exercise, people. That's another thing I forgot to tell you about. Is it's like, if you're going to be an artist, don't just sit all day long. Exercise. That actually gets your creative flow going. So another little tip.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice too. Yeah, every single time when you're in a rut, get up, move around, lift some weights.
Go for a walk, push-ups.
Go for a walk, do something. Yeah.
I'll get up out of my chair, do push-ups, get the blood flowing, drink a lot of water.
Totally.
I've met a lot of sedentary people, and it's like, it's not good. It's not good for your health. It slows you down. Eat right.
You got to get the blood pumping. Get the oxygen going.
Don't eat garbage. That will fog it messes everything up, man. Be healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Everybody, thank you guys so much. Man, 2 hours, 18 minutes. It doesn't feel like that. Holy smokes. This is probably one of the longer interviews I've had on this
fireside
radio.
Just sit around, shoot the...
Holy smokes. Man, oh man. Well, we covered a lot of stuff on this episode. So thank you guys for being here in the chat to watch. Appreciate it. And KEIR, thank you, man.
Babble on.
Well, hey. It's been a thrill, man. It's been a blast. I love talking to you, and I'm sure everybody here loved listening in on your perspective and your experience as well.
Yeah, just a small
I definitely did. But thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Everybody have a wonderful evening. I'm gonna be on Statistical Zero's channel tomorrow at 1:00 Eastern, and then I'm gonna have who do I got on tomorrow night? I got Joe Sontag on tomorrow night at 9:00 Eastern. So we're going to be talking about comic book conspiracies.
What?
So we're going to be talking about not conspiracies within the industry. We're going to be talking...
industry? Oh, I've heard some.
we all have our fill of that. We're going to be talking about various things in comics where they're true to life conspiracies that are being turned into fictional accounts. And things that we think are perhaps this way, and some things that, they definitely are that way. With things like Chris Claremont with X-Men and with the Savage Land. There's some crazy stuff going on in Antarctica. You don't say. I wonder. Just kind of expounding upon a couple of those things, or Mr. Sinister being obsessed with genetics. All that kind of stuff that has been going on and it's these books that we consider to be pure works of fiction. Obviously, these things are still having ties to real events that have occurred, real people. Sinister's like the Joseph Mengele of the X-Men, and to see him kind of, nowadays he's turned into like a fluff character. That dude should be treated as, I mean, that guy is a horrible, horrible character in terms of his obsession with eugenics, genetics, all of that crazy stuff. But of course, nowadays it would be treated like, he's not so bad.
Nah, he's not so bad now. We've moved the goalpost so far. Hey, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, death metal hero. Yeah, why is no one allowed in Antarctica? Why? Yeah, well, so we'll be talking about all kinds of weird things in terms of what they cover in comics and touch upon with those stories. And I'm sure we'll dive into a couple real conspiracy theories and whatnot tomorrow too. Should be a fun show tomorrow for Joe Sontag being on the show. It'll be fun. But everybody have a great night. KEIR, thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
And yeah, we'll do this again soon and get back to work. What are you doing here talking to this dude?
I'm a lazy jerk.
You're talking to this guy over here on screen. He looks like he's homeless. What are you doing, KEIR?
Do I win an award? I never said the F word. I didn't get dinged, right?
You do win an award. You win Mr. Congeniality.
Awesome. I tried to watch out for that.
You're always good with that. You're always good with your language. But everybody, thank you guys so much. Take it easy. See you tomorrow. Have a great night and an even better tomorrow. All right, everybody. Toodles. See you, everybody. Take it easy.
Bye.